Chapter 1860. Yi Xian shook his head. Instead of worrying about this, it was better to worry about himself. If he was not strong enough, he would only be a burden to Qing and his father in the future. At that moment, as if sensing something, he suddenly looked up and frowned. Are we going to make a move? With that, he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already at the divine gate. In front of the divine gate, Yan was already waiting. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Yan, isn't there still half a month? Yan looked at Yi Xian. I don't want to wait another half a month. Can I? Yi Xian nodded. Sure. With that, he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Sword draw to decide life and death. Life and death decided by unsheathing sword with 1,500 stacks. With this strike, Yan's calm expression changed dramatically. She twisted her right hand. Wall of God. Boom. In an instant, a golden barrier appeared in front of her. At that moment, Yi Xian's sword reached her. Kaboom. With a deafening explosion, the golden barrier shattered. At the same time, a ray of sword light sank into Yan's forehead. Boom. Yan's body shattered. Yan was dumbfounded. Gone? She was gone just like that? With only her soul left, Yan looked at Yi Xian blankly. How did you suddenly become so strong? Yi Xian smiled. I've been cultivating hard for the past 10 days. Yan looked as if she had lost her soul. 10 days? You went from 4th phase to 7th phase in 10 days? Yi Xian frowned. What's wrong with you? Yan was speechless. At that moment, she was truly dumbfounded. When she first met Yi Xian's strength was only 4th phase in the divine human tribe. Now Yi Xian's strength was at least 7th phase. How many days had it been? This guy went from 4th phase to 7th phase? Yan looked at Yi Xian and wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, bye-bye. As his voice trailed off, the green profound sword in his hand suddenly sank into the space between Master Yan's brows. Boom. Yan's soul was immediately absorbed. After absorbing Misfortune's soul, the Qingxian sword trembled. Yi Xian smiled and said, Little soul, how much longer do you need to improve? Soul said solemnly, We need at least 100 souls of this level. 100? Yi Xian nodded. I understand. As he spoke, he put away the green profound sword and entered the stone door. When he entered the stone door, he saw a group of gods. These gods were all scholars from the College of Gods. They had been ordered to set up the array formation. When they saw Yi Xian, they were all stunned. Yi Xian glanced at the gods before his gaze landed on the formation not far away from them. He frowned when he saw the array formation. At this time, one of the gods suddenly said, Human, where is Elder Yan? Yi Xian said, Gone. The god frowned slightly. Gone. Yi Xian nodded. Very peacefully. Hearing this, the gods' expressions changed. Yi Xian looked at the gods and smiled. I will send you down to accompany her. As he spoke, the green profound sword in his hand suddenly flew out. Chi 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 chi. In the blink of an eye, all the gods were killed. With his current flying sword, he could even kill a Phase 6 expert in an instant. Only an expert of the same level could barely block his flying sword. After absorbing the souls of the gods, the green profound sword was clearly excited. Young master, this is a great tonic. Yi Xian laughed and put away the green profound sword. With a smile, he put away the azure profound sword and walked to the front of the formation. He glanced at it and his face sank. This array formation covered the entire human universe. The god race refuses to give up on the destruction of the human race. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it and swung his sword. This array of sword energy entered the array formation, and it instantly shattered and was obliterated. At the same time, the entire divine gate vanished into thin air. Yi Xian looked up into the starry sky. He knew that this wasn't the end. Destroying Yan would only make the god race pay more attention to him. In other words, the god race would definitely send even stronger experts next time. Right at this moment, his pupils constricted abruptly, and the green profound sword in his hand started to tremble at this moment. Danger! Yi Xian suddenly turned around and saw a middle-aged man standing not too far away from him. The god race's patriarch, Mo Yen. Yi Xian gazed at Mo Yen with an extremely solemn expression. His intuition told him that this person was extremely dangerous. Mo Yen was also looking at Yi Xian at this moment. After a while, he said, "Rank 7. At this moment, Yan Ji's voice suddenly rang in Yi Xian's mind. "Young Master Yi, he is the god race's patriarch. It's not too late to surrender." At this moment, she was very excited. The god race finally stopped looking down on humans. The patriarch had come personally. That's great. What she was most worried about was that the god race would always look down on humans. They would first send a rank 6 expert, and after the rank 6 expert was killed, they would send a rank 7 expert. After the rank 7 expert was killed, they would send a rank 8 expert. If they really did that, it would be equivalent to giving these humans experience points. But now, after Ian's death, the god race's patriarch had come personally. The god race's patriarch. Yi Xian was silent. Damn it. Why didn't they play by the rules? They came directly, Big Brother. Not only that, but he also sensed some very obscure auras in the surroundings. Obviously, they didn't come alone. At this moment, Mo Yen suddenly said, "I never thought that you humans could develop to this extent. This is something we didn't expect." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Aren't you looking for a man in a green shirt and a woman in a plain dress?" Mo Yan's eyes narrowed. "You know where they are?" Yi Xian said, "If you can't find them, I can help." Mo Yen smiled. "That's great." Yi Xian thought about it, then said, "How about this, I will go with you to the god race to help you find them. As for the humans below, don't touch them for now." Mo Yen smiled. "Why should I?" Yi Xian smiled. "The two of them have jumped out of the circle you drew, and they have now entered your universe. If they are allowed to come into contact with a higher level of martial arts civilization with their talent." At this point, he didn't continue. Mo Yen was silent. Compared to the entire human race, he was more worried about the two who had jumped out of the god race's rules. That was a great danger. Mo Yen looked at Yi Xian. "Perhaps you know where they are, but I don't believe you. It's better to cripple people like you before anything else." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his right hand, and a powerful force suddenly gathered in his hand. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he saw this. He wasn't used to this enemy suddenly not giving him a chance. Right at this moment, Mo Yen was about to attack, but Yi Xian hurriedly said, "We can still talk." Mo Yen shook his head. "Let's talk after I cripple you." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. Yi Xian's pupils constricted, and he suddenly held the sword in his right hand horizontally. Invincible sword domain. Bang. Besides the space where Yi Xian was, the space around him was directly obliterated. His face also turned pale in an instant. Moreover, his sword domain was gradually being obliterated. It couldn't resist Mo Yan's strength at all. The gap in their strengths was too huge. Mo Yen glanced at Yi Xian from afar. "Your domain isn't bad. Unfortunately, you haven't comprehended its quintessence." As soon as he finished speaking, he pressed the fingers of his right hand together and moved lightly. In an instant, Yi Xian's sword domain actually started to disintegrate bit by bit. Moreover, his entire body had started to disintegrate as well. Yi Xian was horrified, and he immediately activated the core sword domain. Bang! In an instant, an expanse of sword light enveloped him. Mo Yen frowned when he witnessed this scene, and then he moved lightly with the fingers of his right hand. Split. This. In an instant, Yi Xian's sword light actually started to disperse bit by bit towards the surroundings. The core sword domain was directly destroyed. Yi Xian suddenly charged forward, and he arrived directly in front of Mo Yen before he slashed with his sword. Life and death decided by drawing the sword. 1,500 sword strikes decided by drawing the sword. As soon as this strike descended, Mo Yan's figure instantly became ethereal. He'd entered another expanse of space. At this instant, Yi Xian immediately fled out of this expanse of space. The sword descended. Bang! An expanse of space was obliterated. However, Mo Yen was completely unharmed. Yi Xian was stunned. He's fine? He's completely unharmed? Exactly what expansive space is Mo Yen in? Mo Yen gazed at Yi Xian. Are you stunned? Do you know how many layers of space there are? Obviously, you don't. As soon as he finished speaking, he pressed his right hand down lightly. Bang! Yi Xian didn't even have the time to react before his figure plummeted straight down. At this moment, he seemed as if he was falling through a river of stars. There was no destination, and he just kept falling while a formidable force ceaselessly tore at his body. Moreover, his invincible sword physique was dissipating bit by bit at this moment. There was a trace of disbelief in Mo Yan's eyes as he gazed at Yi Xian, who was falling incessantly. Under normal circumstances, a single thought from him was sufficient to obliterate a figure at Yi Xian's realm of cultivation. However, this human in front of him was actually able to exchange several blows with him. Even now, he had sent Yi Xian into the abyss of space and time, yet this fellow still hadn't died. This human could actually reach such a level. Right at this moment, Yi Xian in the abyss of space and time suddenly roared angrily. His entire body directly turned into a bloody person. Crazy demon bloodline. Yi Xian opened his right hand, and the green profound sword suddenly turned into a bloody light as it slashed out. Bang! That abyss of space and time was directly torn apart. At the same time, a flying sword appeared below Yi Xian, forcefully holding him back. Yi Xian's body turned around, and both feet stood on the sword. However, at this moment he was still falling straight down, unable to stop at all. That Mo Yen was right in front of him, but the two of them weren't in the same space-time. He was being suppressed by space-time. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword returned to his hand. He slowly closed his eyes, and in the next moment he held the green profound sword with both hands and fiercely slashed. Bang! In an instant, the space-time he was in began to directly shatter. Yi Xian found the right opportunity and directly used the green profound sword to directly return to the current space-time of the universe. As soon as he returned to the current space-time of the universe, he discovered that his physical body was gone. His physical body couldn't withstand passing through a space-time that was too powerful. Right now, he was only left with his soul. Chapter 1861. He couldn't beat him. Even if he used all his strength, he was still suppressed by his opponent. He was suppressed in all aspects. There was no chance. Mo Yen looked at Yi Xian. Call for help? Sure. Yi Xian looked at the azure profound sword in his hand, slowly closed his eyes, and whispered in his heart, Qing. No response. Yi Xian frowned, saying again, Qing. The azure profound sword still didn't respond. It's over. Qing really didn't pay attention to me anymore. Yi Xian was somewhat unwilling, saying again, Qing. Still no response. It's over. In the distance, Mo Yen suddenly said, Where are you? Yi Xian took out Xiao Ta. Xiao Ta, I want to summon the ancestor. After a moment of silence, Xiao Ta said, Summon it. Yi Xian's face darkened. How do I summon it? Xiao Ta was somewhat puzzled. How do I know? I'm just a pagoda. Yi Xian was speechless. F***ck, now you know you're just a pagoda. At this time, Mo Yen suddenly said, Where are you? Yi Xian pondered for a moment, then he urged his bloodline power, whispering in his heart, Dad. No response. Yi Xian's face darkened. This time it's over. Mo Yen suddenly laughed. Looks like you can't summon it. As his voice fell, he lightly swept his right hand, and with this sweep, the space where Yi Xian was actually undulated like waves. And within that undulated space, Yi Xian's expression changed greatly. At this moment, he felt his soul was about to be torn apart. At this moment, he once again felt the aura of death. It had been a long time since he faced death so closely. Despair? Indeed, a little despair. He had already used all his strength and all his trump cards, but the gap between him and Mo Yen was too big. This was not a powerhouse he could fight against. Therefore, he had the idea to call for help. But this time, he didn't call anyone. Qinger did not respond. His father did not respond. At this moment, he understood that he could only rely on himself. Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled. In fact, he had understood this principle many years ago. When he was in Qingqing, he knew that he could only rely on himself. At that time, he could only rely on himself. In the end, he had Qing'er, his father, and someone he could rely on. As a result, he developed a sense of dependence. Failure? He had never failed. Because every time he was about to fail, either his father or Qing'er would appear. But now, they did not appear. When they didn't appear, he realized how useless he was in the face of real difficulties. Useless. Before this, even though he knew that the god race was powerful, he wasn't afraid at all. But because he had Qing'er and his father. Qing'er and his father were so powerful, could the god race even withstand a single strike from them? Of course not. Qing'er and his father were undefeatable. Yi Xian was fearless. He even looked down on the god race. However, he had forgotten one thing. Qing'er and his father were undefeatable, able to kill the god race. But Yi Xian was not one of them. He asked himself, without Qing'er and his father, what was he? What was he? To the god race, he was but an ant, one that could be stomped to death at any time. The truth was cruel, but very real. Complain? He didn't complain. He just felt that he hadn't worked hard enough. At this moment of life and death, many thoughts flashed through his mind like sparks. Not long ago, he knew that he could only rely on himself. But now, he truly felt that he could only rely on himself. Understanding and experiencing were two different concepts. He knew that he couldn't escape death. But he wasn't going to sit here and wait for death. Just as his soul was about to be torn to shreds, he slashed forward with the profound azure sword. Seeking death. He had never wanted to use this sword technique. Because he wasn't his big brother. His big brother used this sword technique to show off, but if he used it he would really die. As Yi Xian swung his sword, the rippling space-time around him began to vanish bit by bit. This was his strongest sword technique. Seeking death. Boom. The space-time around him suddenly split apart. In the next moment, Mo Yen retreated hundreds of meters. The experts of the Divine Clan who were hiding in the dark frowned when they saw this scene. This human actually repelled Mo Yen? Not far away, Yi Xian slowly fell, his soul fading away. Although he had repelled Mo Yen, he hadn't completely withstood Mo Yan's space-time power. Mo Yen looked at Yi Xian, who was about to disappear, in shock. Yi Xian's strength could not be said to be weak, because the current Yi Xian was too young. But what shocked him was these sword skills of Yi Xian. Yi Xian's sword technique had shattered his space-time suppression. Was this a sword technique created by a human? Mo Yen was shocked. Just as Yi Xian was about to disappear, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. She was Yanji. Yanji waved her lily-white hand and a mysterious power enveloped Yi Xian. Then she turned to look at Mo Yen. Patriarch, this person can't die for now. He has extremely high research value. Apart from that, we can also use him to investigate the two people behind him. Those two people have been hiding. If Yi Xian dies, I'm afraid they won't appear. Mo Yen nodded after a moment of silence. Okay. Saying that, he glanced at Yi Xian's soul. However, you have to be careful of this person. Yanji smiled. Don't worry. I will set up many restrictions in his body. Mo Yen nodded. He glanced at the human universe below and frowned. Destroy it? Yanji suddenly said, Patriarch, wait. Mo Yen looked at Yanji. Yanji smiled. I don't think there's a need to rush. Mo Yen frowned. Why? Yanji smiled. Yi Xian wants to protect these humans. If I want him to give in, I think I can use these humans to threaten him. Not only can I threaten him, but I can also threaten the two people behind him. We can set up a formation here first. When Yi Xian and the people behind him are no longer useful, we can destroy them. In any case, the humans below can't do anything. Mo Yen thought for a moment and said, okay. He was also interested in the sword techniques that Yi Xian had just used. Those weren't ordinary sword techniques. The person who could create such sword techniques was definitely not an ordinary person. As Yanji said, Yi Xian and the people behind him had extremely high research value. Soon, the gods retreated. Yanji looked at Yi Xian's soul in the distance and smiled. "You're in my hands. What goes around comes around." Saying that, she took Yi Xian away. God race, God college. Divinity College was the only college of the celestial race. It was the dream of countless celestials. Because one could change one's fate here. Every race had a hierarchy, and the God race had it too. Only by entering the God College and learning about the God civilization could one change one's fate. Ji College. This was Yanji's college. As a teacher, and a great teacher at that, she was qualified to have a college of her own. Inside the college, Yi Xian sat on the ground. At this moment, his body had recovered. In front of him was Yanji. Yanji sized Yi Xian up and said with a smile, "I've set 360 divine technique restrictions in your body. With your current strength, you definitely won't be able to undo them." Yi Xian slowly lay down. He used his hands as a pillow. No one knew what he was thinking. Yanji looked at Yi Xian. "What's wrong? Are you shocked?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I just didn't expect you to still be alive." Yanji blinked. "Then shouldn't you thank me?" Yi Xian looked at Yanji. "What do you want to know?" The corner of Yanji's mouth raised slightly. "You're really a smart person." Saying that, she opened her palm. Xiao Ta and Qing Xian's sword appeared in her hand. Yi Xian said, "You didn't hand it in?" Yanji smiled. Yi Xian smiled. "You want to keep it all for yourself?" Yanji said, "Wrong." Yi Xian frowned. "Wrong?" Yanji said, "The reason why I'm interested in these two things is that they contain extremely high knowledge. I'm only interested in knowledge." Saying that, she pointed to the surroundings. "Look around. These are all books that I wrote. Many of them are my research works." Yi Xian looked around. There were many bookshelves. There were at least hundreds of thousands of books on the bookshelves. Yanji said again, "My God race has been researching the Tao of space-time for our entire lives. The higher our attainments in space-time, the stronger our strength. Do you still remember the battle between you and the Patriarch?" Yi Xian nodded. Yanji smiled. "Do you know why you lost so miserably?" Yi Xian said, "Strength suppression." Yanji nodded. "It's strength suppression. More accurately, it's space-time suppression. He used space-time suppression on you. Do you know how many layers of space-time there are?" Yi Xian shook his head. Yanji chuckled. "Currently, it's known that there are 6 layers of space-time. However, God race can at most cultivate to the 4th layer." Yi Xian was puzzled. Why can only cultivate to the 4th layer? Yanji knew. Because the 5th layer is multidimensional space-time. Once you enter multidimensional space-time, it's equivalent to overlapping multiple universes. Ordinary people can't withstand that kind of space-time pressure. Furthermore, you can't forcefully enter the 5th layer of space-time. Because the 5th layer of space-time is a spatial enchantment. If you forcefully barge in, you'll be attacked by the space-time dimension. Even a rank 9 expert can't block this kind of space-time attack. Of course, if you can grasp this Tao of space-time, it also means that you can use the power of multidimensional space-time to attack the enemy. Unfortunately, until now, no one has entered this kind of space-time. Even some rank 9 peak experts only dare to look at this kind of space-time from afar and don't dare to touch it. Yi Xian glanced at Yanji. "Don't dare to touch the 5th layer of space-time. Then how do you know about the 6th layer of space-time?" Yanji smiled. "Guessing." Yi Xian frowned. "Guessing? There's no evidence?" Yanji blinked. "The exploration of the divine way all starts from guesses, then we slowly go and verify our own guesses. Of course, this process will be very difficult." Yi Xian said in a low voice. "In other words, there might be 7, 8, or even 100 layers of time and space?" Yanji said seriously, "Why is it impossible? Not to mention the history of the human race, even the history of the celestial race was only 800 trillion years. But do you know how many trillions of years of history our universe has? It had a history of at least 10,000 trillion years. Whether it is a human or a god, They are as insignificant as a speck of dust in the entire universe. Yi Xian had a headache. Damn it! What was he in the universe? Chapter 1862. Actually, Yi Xian was quite shocked. He used to only know how to cultivate and had never explored the origin of the universe or anything like that. If he didn't investigate, he wouldn't know. Now that he knew, he was shocked. What did humans and gods count for in this endless universe? At this moment, he really felt that he was somewhat insignificant. At this moment, Yanji said, "Do you know why I'm interested in your sword and this Xiaota?" Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and looked at Yanji. "Space-time Dao?" Yanji nodded and smiled. "Space-time Dao." As she said, she took out the green profound sword. "Previously when you fought with the Patriarch, he sent you into the space-time abyss. That is equivalent to 3 layers of space-time. Moreover, it is the most dangerous place in the 3 layers of space-time. There are no pressure points there. Ordinary people would definitely die if they entered. But you, this fellow, ran out. How could you escape? Because of this sword. And the reason why this sword could bring you out, that means that the person who made this sword is at least proficient in 3 layers of space-time." Yi Xian was silent. He did rely on the green profound sword to escape. As if he thought of something, he suddenly asked, "The space-time that I fell into, that was the space-time abyss?" Yanji nodded. "Space-time abyss. Every layer of space-time has a dangerous place, and the space-time abyss can be said to be the most dangerous place in every layer of space-time." As she said, she glanced at Yi Xian. "You were able to escape from there. This is really abnormal. Because in that space-time abyss, you were suppressed by space-time. Under normal circumstances, it was completely impossible for you to escape. However, you still escaped." As she said this, she glanced at the green profound sword in her hand with a trace of seriousness in her eyes. "I feel that I might have underestimated the strength of the person who made this sword." Yi Xian was silent. Space-time abyss. Regarding that place, he indeed had some lingering fear when he thought about it. Yanji smiled. "Let's get down to business. Let's start with your sword. Let me ask you a question. Was this sword made by your sister?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Yanji knew. "Then do you know how strong she is?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I really don't know." Yanji smiled. "It doesn't matter. You will know soon." Yi Xian looked at Yanji. "Why?" Yanji waved the azure profound sword. "Later, I will need your cooperation. I want to see the limit of this sword. Its limit represents the strength of the plain-dressed woman." Yanji knew. "I need to see it." Yen knew. "I'm going to open a spatial tunnel now. I'll bring you in with me, and then you can use this sword. I want to see if we can reach the 4th layer of spacetime." Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. "Yi Xian." Yanji waved her right hand lightly. In an instant, the space in front of her transformed into a vortex, and then a spatial tunnel appeared within the vortex. To it, to Xian. Yen to be to Xian to it, Tino teat. Yi to say to Yi Xian, T to say to be. Yi, don't to go to I Xian, Thesia, not do to be said to be at. Yanji nodded. "That's good." With that, she brought Yi Xian into the space-time whirlpool. Soon, they were in the space-time tunnel. During the process, Yi Xian looked around curiously. They were in the 3rd space-time tunnel. He had once entered this place with the green profound sword, but he didn't expect this place to be a space-time tunnel. Yanji suddenly said, "This space-time tunnel was opened by my divine race. Any cultivator of my divine race who wants to enter the 4th space-time can go through this space-time tunnel. It's like a shortcut. Even if an ordinary person enters the 3rd space-time tunnel, they won't be able to find the way to the 4th space-time tunnel and might even lose themselves. Of course, even with this shortcut, it doesn't mean that one can enter the 4th space-time tunnel for sure." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" Yanji said, "You'll know soon enough." Yi Xian nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Soon, the two arrived in front of a space-time black hole. Yi Xian looked up and saw an endless black hole. He couldn't see anything, but it contained an extremely mysterious power. Seeing this power, his face became solemn. He had encountered this power before. When he first entered this space-time tunnel with the green profound sword, he felt a very dangerous power. It was the power in front of him. Yanji's expression was also somewhat solemn. The space-time black hole is more dangerous than the space-time abyss. And through this, we can enter the fourth space-time tunnel. With that, she looked at Yixian. You go in. Yixian's face was full of black lines. What about you? Yanji blinked. You go in first. When there's nothing else. You come out to pick me up. *CK. Yixian was a little angry. What if I can't come out after I go in? Yanji said, I'll take good care of your tower. Yixian was speechless. Yanji pointed at the space-time black hole. Go in. Don't you want to know how strong your sister is? Yixian looked at the space-time black hole. After a moment, he looked at the green profound sword in his hand. Without thinking too much, he turned into a sword light and entered the space-time black hole. Seeing this scene, Yanji suddenly became a little nervous. Of course, she wasn't worried about Yixian's life. She was worried that this sword couldn't bring Yixian into the fourth space-time tunnel. Because if that was the case, it meant that the plain-dressed woman's strength was at most level 8. And if Yixian could enter, it meant that the plain-dressed woman's strength had most likely reached level 9. Yanji stared at the space-time black hole. Could this guy come out alive? As if thinking of something, she suddenly frowned. Oh no, I forgot to tell this guy not to wander around in there. He might get lost. This guy wouldn't wander around randomly, right? When Yixian entered the space-time black hole, the mysterious power in the space-time black hole actually retreated rapidly. Yixian was not surprised. Because these mysterious power had encountered him before and these mysterious power didn't dare to approach him at all. Yixian shuttled all the way. Not long after, he passed through the space-time black hole and arrived at the fourth space-time tunnel. Yixian looked around. The surroundings were silent and there was nothing. He felt a little uneasy. Although he had entered the fourth space-time tunnel, he still couldn't control the space-time power of the fourth space-time tunnel. Entering and controlling were two completely different concepts. Yixian glanced around. He couldn't see the third space-time tunnel from here. It seemed that he had to go back and fool Yanji. Yanji definitely knew how to control the fourth space-time tunnel. Thinking of this, he was about to go back, but at this moment, he frowned. Wasn't there still the fifth space-time tunnel? Why didn't he try it himself? Since he said he would try, he would try. Yixian urged the green profound sword and directly turned into a sword light and shot into the distance. At the beginning, he was still a little excited. The fifth space-time tunnel. If he could enter it and learn how to control the space-time power, wouldn't he be invincible? One had to know that no one from the divine race had been able to enter it until now. After an hour, Yixian frowned. Because he found that after shuttling for an hour, there was still dead silence around him. There was nothing. What the hell? Another hour passed and Yixian's face completely darkened. He found that he seemed to be lost. I'm lost. Damn it. He couldn't find his bearings anymore. Because he wanted to go back, but he found that he couldn't find the way back no matter how he turned around. Yixian looked at the green profound sword. Little soul, do you know the way back? Little soul said, Young master, you don't know? Yixian, little soul smiled awkwardly. Young master, Sister Qing, transformed me, but I don't know what she transformed. I'm also very helpless. As she said, although she had been transformed by Qing, there was too much knowledge involved, and she didn't know about these knowledge points. She didn't care. Anyway, she just had to devour it. Why should she care so much? Wasn't that what the young master should care about? Yixian was completely speechless. Little Soul and Xiao Ta were both open-minded. What should he do now? Yixian looked at the dead silence around him and felt a headache. Could it be that he couldn't go back just like that? Without thinking much, he continued to move forward on his sword. Keep moving forward. There must be a way out. Outside. Yanji frowned. Why isn't there any movement from this guy? It had been a day since Yixian had gone in, and Yixian didn't move at all. As if thinking of something, Yanji looked at Xiao Ta in his hand. Xiao Ta, is your master still alive? Xiao Ta was silent for a moment. Alive? Jingji was puzzled. Why are you so sure? Xiao said. Because our universe still exists. So, he must still be alive. Jingji was puzzled. Does his survival have anything to do with our universe? Xiao Ta sighed softly. This silly woman. Don't you know that my young master is linked to the survival of the universe? If the young master is really dead, will this universe still exist? Yanji said again. Xiao Ta, if your master is dead, can you recognize me as your master? I can give you something better. Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment. What's better? Yanji quickly said. For example, status. I can make you the first pagoda of the god race. In the future, you will be called God Pagoda. The name Xiao Ta is too vulgar. God Pagoda sounds much better. Not only that, I can also transform you and make you more powerful. Xiao Ta was silent. Yanji smiled. How about it? Xiao Ta thought for a moment. I can think about it. Yanji nodded. Sure. Saying that, she looked at the pitch-black space-time black hole. What did you mean by what you said just now? It means that our universe still exists, so he is still alive. Xiao said. I understand. Yanji was speechless. P.S. Chapter 1863. Yanji was speechless. Is there something wrong with this Xiao Ta's IQ? It's hard to communicate with him. Yanji stopped talking nonsense with Xiao Ta and turned to look at the space-time black hole. Is that guy alive or dead? At this moment, Yi Xian was completely confused. He was really lost. He had been running on his sword for a day, but he still couldn't see the exit. He was lost in this universe's space-time. How do I get out? He was a little confused. This was a pain in the ass. Yi Xian glanced around. The surrounding space-time was silent. There was no sound at all. It was like a dead zone. He was still in the fourth space-time, but he didn't know which area he was in. How do I go back? He wasn't thinking about going to the fifth space-time, but how to go back. After a while, he disappeared into the distance on his sword. Just like that, he shuttled through the vast fourth space-time for a few days. During these few days, he didn't find anything. At this moment, he was a little annoyed. He wasn't afraid of danger. He was afraid of nothing. Because in this space-time, he couldn't feel the passage of time. Every moment seemed to be the same. Loneliness. He felt like he was the only person in the whole world. When he noticed that he was a little annoyed, he frowned. Why was he annoyed? Was there something wrong with his sword heart? After a while, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He had to say that this lonely place was really suitable for settling himself. Because he could only calm down. Yi Xian simply sat down. Since he couldn't find a way out, he might as well sit down and calm down and think about it. The more he wanted to go out, the more annoyed he would be. And the more annoyed he was, the easier it was to cause problems. After sitting down, Yi Xian began to think. For space-time, what was the difference between here and outside? He directly displayed his sword domain to cover the surroundings. After displaying the sword domain, he could feel this space-time more clearly. He began to study this space-time instead of rushing out. He wasn't busy now anyway. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. With the help of the sword domain, he began to try to integrate with this space-time. It was naturally impossible in the beginning. Even with the assistance of the sword domain, he was unable to fuse into one with this expanse of space. But gradually, he realized that he could use the green profound sword to merge with this space-time. Because he noticed that this space didn't reject the green profound sword. He could use the green profound sword as a medium to merge with this space-time. Because he could become one with the green profound sword. He had to admit that this discovery made him somewhat excited. However, he didn't dare to be careless because he didn't understand this space-time at all. He was afraid that he would play himself to death. But fortunately, with the green profound sword, this space-time was very respectful. Just like that, Yi Xian slowly merged himself with this space-time, and when he did, he was stunned. Because he discovered that the exit was right in front of him. It should be said that there was an exit everywhere. Before, he was trapped in spacetime. But now, he was one with spacetime. Therefore, he could leave this spacetime at any time. Apart from that, he could also use this spacetime. Of course, he had to rely on the Azure Profound Sword. If he did not use the Green Mysterious Sword, this spacetime would not care about him at all. This made him a little embarrassed. He was actually less respected than the Green Mysterious Sword. Yi Xian put away the Green Mysterious Sword and looked around. He didn't plan to leave, he wanted to go to the legendary fifth spacetime to take a look. He did as he said. He arrived at the end of the fourth spacetime, and when he arrived, he frowned. At the end of the fourth spacetime was a void. A void? Yi Xian was about to enter when the Green Profound Sword suddenly trembled. Yi Xian looked at the Green Profound Sword. Little Soul said, "Young master, it's dangerous." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Dangerous?" Little Soul said, "Yes. It's very dangerous, don't go in." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Is it dangerous with you here?" Little Soul said, "I'm not in danger, but you are." Yi Xian, Little Soul continued, "I can feel that it contains an extremely terrifying power, and it's not something you can withstand right now." Terrifying power? Yi Xian looked at the void. Could it be the space-time pressure that Yanji mentioned? Space-time pressure. In this fifth space-time, there were multiple dimensions of space-time, and multiple dimensions of space-time contained multiple space-time pressures. Yi Xian took another look at the void, and then he turned around and left. He naturally wouldn't risk his life. Yanji, who was waiting, suddenly looked up into the distance. From the space-time black hole, a man slowly walked out. It was Yi Xian. Yanji blinked. "You're still alive." Yi Xian smiled. "You want me to die?" Yanji smiled slightly. "What are you saying? Of course I want you to live." As she said that, her smile gradually disappeared. "You went into the fourth spacetime?" Yi Xian shook his head. Yanji frowned slightly. Yi Xian nodded. "After I entered that spacetime black hole, the spacetime pressure in that spacetime black hole was too strong. I didn't dare to go any deeper." Yanji looked at Yi Xian. "Really?" Yi Xian nodded. "Really? If you don't believe me, I can swear." Yanji immediately said, "Then swear." Yi Xian said seriously, "I swear on my father, if what I said is false, let him be. Forget it." Yanji suddenly shook his head. "You unfilial son." "Yi Xian," Yanji said again, "since you didn't go to the fourth space-time, why did you stay for so long?" Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "It was too dark inside, I got lost." Yanji stared at Yi Xian. "Really?" Yi Xian said seriously, "If you don't believe me, I can swear." Yanji, Yi Xian said, "Miss Yanji, after knowing each other for so long, you should be very clear about my character. I can bleed and my head can be broken, but it's absolutely impossible for me to say anything against my heart." Yanji glanced at Yi Xian. "Why do I feel like you're bluffing?" "Yi Xian," Yanji said again, "if you didn't go in, then you didn't go in. Anyway, I don't think it's possible to go in. Not to mention your sister, even the patriarch spent countless years before he could enter." Saying that, she laughed. She was a little happy. Because Yi Xian didn't enter the fourth space-time, it meant that the woman's strength hadn't reached phase 9. At most, she was phase 8. This wasn't a bad thing for the divine race. Thinking of this, she glanced at Yi Xian. "You stay here first, don't run around because the divine race isn't that friendly to humans, understand?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "I see." Yanji nodded. "You're a smart person, it's good that you understand." Saying that, she turned and left. Inside the hall, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth rose slightly. He was currently at phase 7, but his strength had far exceeded phase 7. There was a gap between him and phase 9, but phase 9 shouldn't think about suppressing him, because the space-time dimension suppression had no effect on him. It could be said that he stood on the same level as phase 9 powerhouses. Of course, this didn't mean that he was a phase 9 powerhouse. In short, he wouldn't be unable to fight back against a phase 9 powerhouse now. As if thinking of something, he sat down cross-legged and sank his consciousness into his body. He glanced and his face darkened. Damn, that woman really put more than 300 kinds of restrictions in his body. Was this woman crazy? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Little soul, can you break these restrictions?" Little soul said, "Of course. Do you need to break them now?" Yi Xian thought about it and said, "Not now." If he broke them now, it would alert that woman. He couldn't face the entire god race head-on. Soul suddenly became excited and said, "Young lord, I feel a lot of powerful souls. Should we go and absorb them?" Yi Xian's face darkened. "Little soul, I feel many powerful souls. Should we go absorb them?" Little soul giggled. "Little soul, I miss Sister Qing." Yi Xian said with a smile, "I miss her too." Little soul said, "Young master, I have a plan. Do you want to hear it?" Yi Xian was curious. "Plan?" Little soul said seriously, "Let me stay with Sister Qing, for a while, then I'll come back for you." Yi Xian's face darkened. "Do you think I'm too weak?" Little soul quickly said, No. I just want to become stronger and help you, young master. If I stay with Sister Qing for a while, Sister Qing's temper will be irritable, and she will point to a place and then cut down with her sword. In a few days, I'll definitely become very strong. At that time, I'll be able to help you." Yi Xian, Little Soul said again, "I'm one with young master. I absolutely have no thoughts of despising young master." "Young master, you know that?" Yi Xian laughed. "Of course I know." As Little Soul said, Little Soul really wanted to help him. Yi Xian sighed. "I also want to follow Qing, but," saying that, she shook her head. Intuition told him that he couldn't follow Qing too often. Because after being with Qing for a long time, he always felt that everyone else was an ant. This idea was very scary. At this moment, Yan Ji suddenly walked in. She walked in front of Yi Xian and said with a smile, "I'll take you to a place." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What place?" Yan Ji knew. "The academic exchange." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Why are you taking me to the academic exchange?" Yan Ji said with a smile. "I want to take you to see what a higher civilization is. After you see it, you'll find out how great our divine race is. And that sister of yours, she's as small as an ant in front of our divine race civilization." At this time, Xiao Da suddenly said, "If you say that, I Xiao Da will not accept it. Miss Yan Ji, I advise you to be kind." Chapter 1864. Xiao Da was not convinced. Yan Ji laughed. "You are not convinced because you are not knowledgeable enough. I don't blame you." Xiao Da was speechless. Yan Ji looked at Yi Xian. "Let's go." Yi Xian waved the green profound sword in his hand. "Miss Yan Ji, can you make this sword?" Yan Ji looked at Yi Xian. "No." Yi Xian smiled. "But Qing the can." Then he walked out of the hall. Yan Ji was silent. She knew what Yi Xian meant. After a while, she turned and left. Led by Yan Ji, Yi Xian arrived in front of an academic palace. At the moment, many scholars of the Divinity College had gathered there. Academic exchange. In the God race, there would be an academic exchange every year. On the surface, it was for improvement, but in reality, it was for showing off. When Yan Ji and Yi Xian arrived, many people's eyes fell on Yi Xian and Yan Ji. To be precise, they were looking at Yi Xian. Human. When they saw Yi Xian, many of the divine scholars were filled with curiosity. Human. This was a rare thing. Soon, many people surrounded them. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, a man suddenly smiled. "Instructor Yan Ji, is this the human you brought back from the human world?" Yan Ji smiled. "But Instructor Gong Zhuang is interested in him?" The man named Gong Zhuang smiled. "Of course I am." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "I never thought that humans would develop to this day and form their own unique civilization. The Tao of life is really mysterious." At this moment, a celestial lady at the side smiled and said, "Indeed. I heard that there are humans who have jumped out of the rules set by us. I have to say, humans are amazing. Yi Xian glanced at the divine lady who had spoken. He was a little surprised. Originally, he thought that when he arrived, these gods would mock him or look down on him. After all, the human race was created by the divine race. These gods would definitely be high and mighty. But he didn't. These gods in front of him didn't have that kind of arrogant attitude. This surprised him a little. At this moment, Yanji looked at the female god and smiled. Instructor Yuan Qing, I heard that you are very interested in humans and have been researching them? The girl named Yuan Qing nodded. I've done some research. As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian and said with a smile, actually, humans are really outstanding because their ability to learn is very terrifying. Moreover, just like my god race, they also like to explore the unknown. If it weren't for the restriction we set up, the human race would have developed far more. Even so, some of them seem to have broken through the restrictions we set up. At this point, a trace of worry flashed in her eyes. The man called Gong Zhuang smiled and said, Yuan Qing, are you worried that this human will become a great enemy of ours in the future? Yuan Qing smiled and said, they already are. Gong Zhuang shook his head. If the human race continues to develop, they will indeed become our great enemy. However, for now, they shouldn't be a threat to us. Even if there are 1 or 2 special humans, they will only be 1 or 2. They won't be a real threat to us. Our god race's 80 billion years of history isn't something humans can overturn. Yuan Qing smiled and said, that's true, but we shouldn't look down on any civilization, especially humans who have such a strong learning ability. Gong Zhuang nodded. Indeed, we shouldn't look down on them. In fact, we should eliminate them as soon as possible to prevent future disasters. As he spoke, he suddenly looked at Yanji and said, Instructor Yanji, I heard that you suggested to the patriarch to let the humans go for now? Yanji nodded. Right now, humans are still of some use. At this point, she glanced at Yi Xian and said with a smile, I think what Yuan Qing said is very true. Some humans are really outstanding. Young Master Yi, can you show us your sword? Yi Xian smiled and said, sure. As he spoke, he opened his palm and the azure profound sword flew to the center of the crowd. When the divine scholars saw the azure profound sword, they were all shocked. Gradually, the expressions of the divine scholars turned solemn. Yuan Qing walked to the azure profound sword and touched it lightly. After a while, she said in a deep voice, which god made this sword? Yanji smiled and said, it's not a god, it's made by a human. Yuan Qing turned to look at Yanji and frowned. A human? On the battlefield, all the gods were slightly shocked. Yanji nodded, it's a human. Yuan Qing looked at Yi Xian. He made it? Yi Xian was just about to nod when Yanji suddenly smiled and said, it's his younger sister. Younger sister? Yuan Qing said in a deep voice, where is his younger sister now? Yanji blinked and asked, what do you want to do? Yuan Qing shook her head. Yanji's eyes flashed with a trace of complexity. Yanji, this sword involves the Tao of space-time. It's profound. Yanji nodded. I know. That's why I brought it here for you to see. Yuan Qing said softly, a human can actually understand the Tao of space-time to such a degree. I have to say, this is really terrifying. She looked at Yanji, the woman in the plain dress who is wanted by our god tribe. Is she the one who made this sword? Yanji nodded. Yuan Qing said in a deep voice, tell the patriarch to keep her alive. This woman has great research value. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. These gods attached great importance to this azure profound sword, but they did not pay enough attention to Qing'er. Research Qing'er? He did not know what level Qing'er had reached, but he knew that Qing'er's strength definitely surpassed the god tribe. Thinking of this, Yi Xian suddenly asked, Xiao Ta, what level do you think Qing'er has reached? Xiao Ta had been with Dad for a long time, so he should have a better understanding. After a moment of silence, Xiao Ta said, the ceiling. Yi Xian frowned. The ceiling? Xiao Ta said, everyone knows. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Yuan Qing suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Human, can you let me study this sword for a while? Yi Xian smiled. You have to ask Miss Yanji about this. Yanji immediately kept the azure profound sword and glared at Yuan Qing. This sword and this human belong to me now. Yuan Qing said in a deep voice, study it for a month. After a month, I will return it to you untouched. Yanji shook her head. No. Yuan Qing said again, 10 days. After a moment of silence, Yanji said, all right, but I need your insights on the space-time matter theory. Hearing this, the gods were speechless. This woman was too cunning. That was Yuan Qing's lifetime of research. After a moment of silence, Yuan Qing said, all right. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a thick ancient book appeared before Yanji. Yanji chuckled, put the book away, and then passed the azure profound sword to Yuan Qing. 10 days it is. As soon as she finished speaking, she glanced at the surroundings and said, are all of you interested in this human? He's very formidable and he knows a lot of human knowledge. If all of you want to understand humans, you can ask him. Yi Xian smiled. She wants to rent him out. Meanwhile, a woman from the god race suddenly smiled. I'm slightly interested. Yi Xian gazed at her, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Human, I'm very interested in the way you humans reproduce. We can talk about it in detail. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, I'm interested in the way you humans reproduce as well. We can talk about it in detail. All the gods were speechless. In the end, Yi Xian wasn't able to talk about it in detail with the woman, because Yanji wouldn't allow it. She was afraid that something would happen between Yi Xian and the woman from the god race because it was against ethics. In the following time, the group of divine human scholars started to discuss, while Yi Xian listened quietly at the side. Even though he could enter the fourth layer of space now, there were many things that he didn't understand, especially the space-time Dao. Yi Xian's expression gradually became solemn, because he noticed that the scholars from the god race were very formidable. Perhaps they weren't very strong, but they were very knowledgeable. Especially when it came to knowledge, they knew a lot of details. They were a group that specialized in researching the future for the god race. That was exactly why the scholars from the god race had such a high status in the god race. But the humans didn't have such a group of scholars. Suddenly, a voice resounded from the side. Where are the humans? Where are the humans? Hearing this, everyone turned to look. Not far away, a young god walked over with a smile. Seeing this god, the group of divine scholars frowned. The young god's gaze landed on Yi Xian and he smiled. You're a human? Yi Xian smiled. Yes. The young god sized up Yi Xian and shook his head. You're indeed a lowly creature. You're so ugly. Yi Xian blinked his eyes. Who are you talking about, lowly creature? The young god immediately said, I'm talking about you. Yi Xian said with a smile, that is exactly what a lowly creature is talking about. The other gods. The young god was stunned. Very quickly, his face turned ferocious. You dare to humiliate me. Yi Xian went forward and gave him a slap. But before anyone could react, the young god was sent flying tens of feet away. The other gods were stunned. Why did he suddenly attack? Beside Yi Xian, Yanji said in a low voice, how can you hit a god? Yi Xian said angrily, he humiliated you. The other gods were stunned. Humiliated us? Did he? Yanji looked at Yi Xian. Wasn't he humiliating you humans? How did he become humiliating us? Yi Xian said, were humans created by the gods? Yanji nodded, yes. Yi Xian said, then when he humiliated humans, isn't that the same as humiliating the gods? The other gods. Yanji frowned. Isn't there something wrong with your logical thinking? Yi Xian suddenly said, are you unhappy with him too? Yanji said, I don't like him, but... At this point, she suddenly stopped. What did she say? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, if you don't like him, that means I don't like him too. Miss Yanji, don't worry, if there's anything, I will bear it alone. As he said that, he charged in front of the man and punched him in the face. Bang! The god was sent flying once again. And Yi Xian rushed over again, shouting as he hit, who asked you to make Miss Yanji angry? Let me tell you, if there's anything, come at me, don't make Miss Yanji angry. On the other side, Yuan Qing looked at Yanji. Yanji, we all don't like him, but don't you think it's a bit too much to let a human hit him like that? Yanji. P.S. Some people say that I don't update enough. Actually, I want to say that no matter how fast the author writes, it can't compare to the speed at which the readers read. For example, if I write 10 chapters, it might take a few days, but you can finish it in a few minutes. The reader is the field, the author is the cow. There are only bad cows, there are no bad fields. And some readers think that I don't update enough, so they crazily scold me. I read the book reviews every day. Really, sometimes I'm speechless. Why are some of my readers so angry? They're so angry that they want to kill me. Nowadays, the anger on the internet is too strong. To be honest, I've been reading the book reviews recently, and I'm getting a little depressed. This problem won't get better without a few hundred votes. Do as you see fit. Chapter 1865. In the distance, Yi Xian was still beating up the male god and had no intention of stopping. Yuan Qing glanced at Yanji. Tell him to stop. Yanji came back to her senses and quickly pulled Yi Xian back. She was a little angry. Do you know who he is? Yi Xian blinked. No matter who he is, as long as you don't like him, I will beat him up. Yanji stared at Yi Xian. You want to frame me? Yi Xian shook his head and was a little disappointed. Miss Yanji, am I such a person in your heart? Yanji said in a cold voice, You're dishonest. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, the male god who was being beaten suddenly said angrily, Yanji, you bitch, how dare you instigate your people to beat me up, you. Yi Xian flew into a rage. How dare you insult teacher Yanji Dai? As soon as his voice fell, he suddenly rushed out. Boom. Before the male god could react, his head was directly smashed by a punch. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. Directly killed? Yanji's face was a little pale, and she said with a trembling voice, You. Yi Xian looked at Yanji. He insulted you. Yanji said angrily, Do you know who he is? He is the vice dean's grandson. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Second generation? Yanji glared at Yi Xian. Yes, he is a second generation. Yi Xian was a little disdainful. Yi Xian, look down on this kind of second generation the most in my life. Xiao Ta suddenly said, Young lord, before you speak, can you use your brain, Yi Xian? In front of Yi Xian, Yanji said in a deep voice, You idiot, you think you can act recklessly just because you don't like it? Without strength and background, don't talk about acting recklessly. Even if you want to do a good deed, you have to think twice first. Yi Xian frowned. Is your god race so complicated? Yanji was just about to speak when an extremely terrifying pressure suddenly swept over from afar. Seeing this, the expressions of the divine scholars became serious. At this moment, an old true god appeared in front of everyone. The person who had just arrived was none other than Gao Qi, the vice president of the School of Divinity. Gao Ke's gaze fell on Yi Xian. Did you kill him? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Gao Ke's eyes narrowed slightly. Who gave you the guts? As he said that, he looked at Yanji. Is that you, Mentor Yanji? Everyone in the surroundings gazed at Yanji. Will Yanji protect Yi Xian? Yanji fell silent. It has nothing to do with me. Yi Xian smiled and said nothing. Gao Ke stared at Yanji. Teacher Yanji, this human was protected by you. But now, he is openly killing people in my god race. What do you think? Yanji was silent. Gao Ke sneered. Don't tell me you want to protect a human? Yanji sighed softly. She looked at Yi Xian. I don't really like the god you killed. However, he is still a god, not a human. You killed a god, so you deserve to die. As she said that, she began to chant in God's language. She wanted to activate the seal in Yi Xian's body. At this moment, her voice suddenly stopped. Because a sword was directly inserted into her throat. Yanji's eyes widened. Yanji was filled with disbelief. The person who attacked was Yi Xian. Yi Xian shifted his consciousness, and a sword light flew out. Before Gao Zhu in the distance could react, his head was sent flying. Although Gao Ku was the vice dean, Most of the gods in the Theological Institute were scholars. They only liked to research and were actually very weak. Of course, the most important thing was that he, Yi Xian, could already enter the fourth spacetime. After seeing Yi Xian kill Gao Ku in an instant. This chapter is not finished. Please continue. At this moment, everyone present was dumbfounded. Killed just like that? Yi Xian looked at Yan Ji and smiled. Are you a little surprised? Yan Ji stared at Yi Xian. You? Yi Xian grinned. Your seal is useless against me. Yan Ji said in a deep voice. We are friends, right? Yi Xian blinked. Nonsense. As he said that, he raised his hand and slashed. Yan Ji was directly erased. Friends? He felt that it was a little funny. This woman actually wanted to trick him. At this moment, Yuan Qing suddenly said, Human. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Qing and the others. Hand over all your academic research, immediately. The gods were furious. Yuan Qing quickly said, Give it to him, give it to him. Quickly. As she said that, she took out a storage ring and handed it to Yi Xian. The rest of the gods were a little confused. One of the gods said in a deep voice, Instructor Yuan Qing, how can we be threatened by a human? Before he could finish his words, a sword was pressed against his forehead. The god was stunned. Then he said, I think it's fine. As he said that, he quickly took out a storage ring and handed it to Yi Xian. The gods. Soon, all the gods gave the storage rings to Yi Xian. The storage rings contained their lifetime's research. Yi Xian took all of the storage rings. He looked above his head and said with a smile, Goodbye. As he said that, he disappeared. As soon as he left, Yuan Qing heaved a sigh of relief. As if she thought of something, her face became gloomy. This human has become a great disaster. We can't let him live. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of her. She grinned. Surprised? Yuan Qing was stunned. Just as she was about to attack, Yi Xian raised his hand and slashed. Yuan Qing's head flew into the air. How dare you! A furious shout suddenly resounded from afar. Yi Xian turned around and vanished. As soon as Yi Xian disappeared, an old man showed up. It was the Grand Elder, Yan Zhu's expression became ferocious when he saw Yi Xian flee. How dare you! He clawed forward as soon as he finished speaking. Countless spaces away, Yi Xian frowned slightly. He suddenly turned around, and at this moment, a giant hand came straight at him. A powerful pressure immediately enveloped the space-time he was in. Yi Xian frowned. It's chasing me from so far away. He didn't think too much about it, and he slashed with his sword. Bang! As the sword light shattered, Yi Xian retreated repeatedly. However, the enormous hand was shattered as well. As soon as Yi Xian came to a stop, a powerful aura rushed towards him. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. He did not choose to fight it head-on. Instead, he activated the green profound sword and disappeared into the space-time. As soon as he vanished, Yan Zhu appeared. Yan Zhu frowned deeply when he saw Yi Xian disappear again. This human had actually escaped right under his nose. Right at this moment, the patriarch of the god clan, Mo Yen, appeared. Yan Zhu said solemnly, Wasn't this person sealed by Yanji? Mo Yen shook his head. I was too careless. Yan Zhu sighed softly. This Yanji was also careless. We've underestimated this human. Mo Yen spoke in a low voice. Our top priority right now is to find this person as soon as possible. Yan Zhu, if this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Nodding, he seemed to have thought of something and asked, Has God General Yu Chen died? Mo Yen nodded, Yes. As he spoke, his expression became slightly gloomy. I was investigating this matter earlier, and now, I still don't know if he really died at the hands of that woman in a plain dress. Yan Zhu sighed once more. I never expected that the human race would actually develop to such an extent. Mo Yen said, Now isn't the time to be thinking about this. Our top priority right now is to find these people as soon as possible. Since they were able to break through the restrictions set up by my god clan, it means that they're extraordinary geniuses. Now that they've arrived in our cosmos, I'm worried that they'll come into contact with the divine Dao civilization. Especially Yi Xian. He stole the spatial rings of Yuan Qing and the others. As he spoke, he suddenly turned around. Pass down my order to search for Yi Xian with all our strength. Understood. A voice resounded not too far away. Mo Yen looked into the distance. Elder Yen Zhu, you'll be personally in charge of this matter regarding Yi Xian. I'm going to investigate the cause of God General Yu Chen's death. Yen Zhu fell silent briefly before he spoke out. I'm going to mobilize all the divine generals. Mo Yen was stunned. All the divine generals? Yen Zhu nodded. That's not all. I'm going to mobilize the divine guards as well as the 10 divine generals. Mo Yen spoke in a low voice. Grand Elder Yen Zhu, he's just a human. Yen Zhu looked at Mo Yen. I can't underestimate them anymore. This was especially so for Yi Xian. He had instantly killed the vice dean. What did this mean? This means that in the short few days he was locked up, his strength has increased again. Mo Yen remained silent. Yen Zhu sighed in a low voice. My intuition tells me that we might have even underestimated that woman in a plain dress and that man in a green robe. Mo Yen said in a low voice. Earlier, Yanji told me that the woman in a plain dress should be at most a rank 8 expert. Because that sword can't lead to the 4th dimension. Yen Zhu suddenly said, she is dead. Mo Yen. Yen Zhu looked at Mo Yen. Patriarch, Yen Zhu is dead. He had died because of his own carelessness, and because he had underestimated his enemy. If we still believe what she said, then we may end up like her. Mo Yen remained silent. Yen Zhu continued, up until now, Bo Ye is dead, Yen is dead, and Yu Chen is dead. There's also Yuan Qing and the others. Why don't we pay attention to these humans? Moreover, those humans broke through the restriction we set up without anyone's help. This means that their talent and creativity are no weaker than us gods. Our god clan must take them seriously. Mo Yen said, Grand Elder is right. From now on, the experts of the clan are at your disposal. However, that Yi Xian has already escaped. How are you going to find him? Yen Zhu smiled. It's not difficult to force him to show himself, because he wants to protect those humans. And those humans will become his greatest burden. Mo Yen nodded slightly. I understand. Go do it. Yen Zhu turned and left. Mo Yen also turned and left after a moment of silence. Right after the two of them left, a man suddenly appeared here, and it was the imperial monarch. The emperor who was almost killed by the woman in a plain dress. The emperor took out the portrait in his hand. After looking at it for a while, he looked into the distance and said softly, the god clan wants to kill Senior's brother. With Senior's brother's current strength, he is definitely not a match for the god clan. And Senior's brother and that green-robed man have no intention of helping. I alone won't be able to resist the divine race. No, I have to find some helpers to help young Master Yi at the critical moment. At that time, I'll cripple myself a bit. This way, young Master Yi will owe me a huge favor, and the favor he owes me is the same as Senior Su Kun owes me a favor. Damn, this monarch is truly a genius. With that, he turned and disappeared. Go find helpers. End of this chapter. Chapter 1866. Yi Xian arrived at the 4th layer, found a quiet place, and sat down cross-legged. He took out all the storage rings and began to scan them with his divine sense. The spatial rings contained the lifetime research of the divine clan scholars. To him, these things were still of great value. Humans were inferior to the divine clan, and since they were inferior, then they naturally had to learn from them. That was nothing to be ashamed of. Yi Xian sighed softly after he finished absorbing all the ancient books in the spatial rings. Needless to say, the divine clan's divine civilization was far more advanced than human civilization. There was no comparison at all. For example, the divine clan had explored the 6th layer of space-time, but humans hadn't even figured out the 2nd layer, and some had even separated the two into separate studies. They were too far behind. Yi Xian started to study how to control the 4th layer of spacetime. Needless to say, the divine clan's understanding of the Tao of spacetime was very thorough, especially when it came to controlling space-time. Infinite World. Desolation City. There was a city governor's estate in Desolation City, and the reason Desolation City was so orderly was because of this city governor's estate. To be more precise, it was because of the mysterious city governor, a 9th rank expert. However, he wasn't an ordinary 9th rank expert, because he was the oldest 9th rank expert in the Infinite World. When Emperor Jun arrived at the city governor's estate, a black-robed old man blocked his way. The old man's appearance was 70% to 80% similar to a human, and the only difference was that his ears were extremely sharp and his eyes were dark blue. The old man glanced at Emperor Jun but didn't speak. Emperor Jun smiled. "Tell that old geezer that I have something good to tell him." The old man nodded slightly. "Wait a moment." He turned around and left as soon as he finished speaking. It didn't take long for the old man to appear before Emperor Jun again. "Your Majesty, the old master doesn't want to see you." Emperor Jun roared with laughter. "Tell him that I was almost instantly killed." The old man frowned when he heard this. "Based on your Excellency Emperor's strength, no one in this world can kill you instantly." Emperor Jun smiled. "Just tell him, Jing Yu." The old man hesitated for a moment, nodded, and left. A while later, the main gate of the governor's residence suddenly opened and Jing Yu walked out. He glanced at the emperor and said, "Master invites you in." The emperor walked into the manor and followed Jing Yu to a small courtyard where an old man lay. He was wearing a thin linen robe and was missing an arm. This person was the city lord of Desolate City. No one knew his name. The emperor was taken aback when he saw that the old man was missing an arm. "You old fart you," the old man glanced at the emperor. "It was that human girl who almost killed you, wasn't it?" The emperor mused. "Don't tell me she cut off your arm." The old man said indifferently, "What do you think?" The emperor's face turned grim. "Even you can't beat her?" The old man sneered. "Fight? Are you kidding me?" Before the old man could do anything, he was almost beheaded by her. The emperor was speechless. The old man slowly closed his eyes. "What is this divine clan doing? How can this human be so strong?" The emperor thought for a while and said, "The god tribe is after her. When, if this chapter is not finished, please turn the page." The old man then turned to look at the emperor. "Arrest her." The emperor nodded. "Kill her and you'll get 2 types of crystals." After a moment of silence, the old man said, "Who is the current patriarch of the god-human race?" The emperor said, "Emu Yan." The old man frowned. "How did he become the head of the family with his IQ?" The emperor smiled. "He probably doesn't know the senior's true strength." The old man was silent. The emperor continued, "Old man, the god race is doomed this time. I know one of their elders, so I wanted to warn them, but..." At this point, he shook his head. "After some thought, I decided to forget about it." The old man was puzzled. "Why?" The emperor sighed. "I've looked into it. That senior Suchuan is from the human world, and she cares a lot about her brother in the human world, young Master Yi." At this moment, the old man suddenly took out a portrait. The person in the portrait was Yi Xian. The old man looked at the emperor. "Is this the one?" The emperor nodded. "That's him." "Old man, why do you have it too?" The old man said after a moment of silence, "She told me that this was her brother and she just stared at me." He clenched his right fist. Luckily, the old man was smart enough to promise that he would take care of this young man. Otherwise, the old man's head would have flown off his neck. The emperor was speechless. The old man looked at the emperor again. "Is the young man here?" The emperor nodded. "He is. And now, the entire god-human race is after him." Damn it. The old man suddenly sat up. Have the god-human race lost their minds? Do they know what they're doing? The emperor shook his head. Obviously not. The old man was puzzled. Then why didn't you just kill them? The emperor sighed. "I think there are 2 reasons. First, she has no interest in the god-human race. Second, she probably wants to train her brother, young Master Yi." The old man said solemnly, "There are 2 reasons." The emperor nodded. "I wanted to talk to the god-human race, but when I found out that they were going after young Master Yi, I knew that the feud between them would never be resolved. The old man shook his head. The god-human race is retarded. The emperor said, you can't blame them entirely. After all, they created humans. They wouldn't think that a human could surpass them. The old man said, I'm confused about that as well. Humans were created by the god-human race. How could a human be so powerful? The emperor looked at the old man. Do you know what level she's at? The old man shook his head after a moment of silence. I can't. He couldn't. The emperor said, even you can't see through her, old man? The old man said indifferently, if I could see through it, would I still be able to find out that I was killed? The emperor smiled bitterly. The old man suddenly asked, where is young Master Yi now? The emperor said, he ran away. I don't know his exact location because young Master Yi ran a little too fast. The old man looked into the distance. What's the god-human race doing? The emperor smiled. They're making a lot of noise. As far as I know, the god-human race's first elder, Yanzhu, has already called back the god-human race's 10 immortal generals. They're obviously up to something big. The old man looked at the emperor. This young Master Yi can't. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Something's wrong. The emperor nodded. I know, but now is not the time for us to make a move. The old man smiled. You want to make a move at a critical moment so that this favor will be more valuable. The emperor nodded. That's a selfish motive of mine. He then sighed. Old man, you and I can't see through Senior Su Chang's strength. That means she's at least at the 10th rank. Here's the question. How did she reach the 10th rank? The old man was silent. The 10th rank? He had been studying it for millions of years. But he still hadn't reached the 10th rank. He smiled bitterly at the thought. A human had surpassed the limit of the 9th rank and reached the 10th rank. That was terrifying. The emperor suddenly said, Old man, the god-human race isn't weak. If they risk everything to kill this young man, with your and my strength, I'm afraid. The old man fell silent. He wasn't afraid of the god-human race, but he wouldn't underestimate them either. After all, this was a race with an ancient heritage. Even in this endless universe, they held great weight. A moment later, the old man said, keep an eye on the god-human race. No matter what, we can't let them kill young Master Yi. The emperor nodded. All right. With that, he stood up and left. The old man suddenly said, you must find a way to contact young Master Yi. Tell him to be careful of the god-human race. I'm afraid they'll kill him right away. The emperor nodded. I'll find a way to contact young Master Yi. But you must think of a way. I'm afraid the god-human race will do anything to kill him. If that's the case, we'll be pinned down and young Master Yi is killed. That'll be troublesome. The old man was silent for a moment and said, I'll arrange it. The emperor laughed. I'm relieved to hear that. The old man had lived for so long and his network wasn't something the emperor could compare to. Now, the old man was calling for help. A moment later, the emperor stood up and left. The old man looked into the distance and said softly, God-human race, you've got guts. He then turned to Jingyu. Pass down my order. Have the elves who are still alive come here at once. Also, send word to those who owe me favors. If they still remember that favor, they should come here at once. Jingyu bowed. Understood. With that, he turned and left. The old man slowly closed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. The god-human race. Under the order of the god-human race's grand elder, Yanzhu, the 10 divine generals had all returned to the god realm. Apart from that, Yanzhu also mobilized countless mysterious powerful fighters from the god-human race. In a large hall, Yanzhu looked at a god in a black robe. Still no news? The god in the black robe shook his head. That human seems to have evaporated. There's no news of him at all. Yanzhu slowly closed his eyes. A moment later, he said, Let's go to the human world. The god in the black robe looked at Yanzhu. To the human world? Yanzhu said, We'll wait for him in the human world. As long as he doesn't return, I'll slaughter millions of humans until he shows up. With that, he walked out of the hall. Soon, countless powerful fighters from the god-human race headed for the human universe. End of chapter. Chapter 1867. In the fourth space, Yi Xian was still cultivating. Of course, he was cultivating inside Xiaota. He could now control the fourth space. According to God's standard, he could barely be considered a rank 9 expert. Of course, there was still a gap between him and a real rank 9 expert. After all, a rank 9 expert was not as simple as just controlling the fourth space. However, if he were to face a rank 9 expert, he could still fight. At least, he wouldn't be suppressed by the opposite space and be unable to fight back. Without cultivating, Yi Xian left Xiaota. A few days had passed. If the god race could not find him, they would definitely attack the humans. He had to return to the human race. If he did not return with Shaoan and Jingji's strength, they would not be able to fight against the god race. Human universe. On this day, countless mysterious experts suddenly descended. They were the god race experts. Their leader was Yan Zhu. Somewhere in the starry sky, Shaoan looked at Yan Zhu and the others calmly. Beside her was Jingji and God Emperor Lin Shan. Shaoan whispered, "Is he still alive?" Lin Shan smiled. "He is definitely alive." Shaoan and Jingji looked at Lin Shan. Lin Shan smiled. "The reason why I am so sure is because of these gods. They are still alive. This means that Yi Xian is still alive." Shaoan whispered, "Plain dress woman?" Lin Shan whispered, "Yes." Shaoan asked, "You think she is stronger than the god race?" Lin Shan's eyes flashed with disdain. "How can the god race compare to her?" What a joke! Not far away, Yan Zhu suddenly laughed. "My god race cannot compare to a human." Lin Shan looked at Yan Zhu and smiled. "Let's not talk about this. You are here today to exterminate the human race. It's true that we're no match for your divine clan, but your divine clan can forget about annihilating the entire human race." Yan Zhu looked at Lin Shan. "My god race created you humans and can also exterminate you." Lin Shan laughed. "As long as the god race has the plain dress woman, we will exist forever." Plain dress woman. Yan Zhu chuckled. "A woman in a plain dress? I hope that she will appear soon and become your savior." As soon as he finished speaking, an expert from the divine clan behind him dashed towards Lin Shan. Lin Shan suddenly shouted, "Young Master Yi, if you don't show yourself, the old man will self-destruct." There was no response. Lin Shan's expression froze. Still no response. Lin Shan smiled bitterly. "Young Master Yi, the old man still wants to live a few more years. Now, it seems that I can only leave in advance." As he spoke, a terrifying aura suddenly surged out of his body. He chose to self-destruct. Facing so many divine race experts, he could only choose to self-detonate and hope to drag one of them down with him. At this moment, the head of the divine race powerhouse that was charging towards Lin Shan suddenly flew off. Blood spurted out from his neck like a fountain, and then it formed a beautiful arc in the air. All the gods were stunned. In the distant horizon, a man slowly walked over. It was Yi Xian. Seeing Yi Xian, Yan Zhu narrowed his eyes. As for Lin Shan and the other two, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. If young Master Yi did not appear, they really could only choose to self-destruct. Yi Xian walked in front of Shaoan and the other two and smiled. "Fortunately, we are not late." Jingji, who was at the side, said indifferently, "I thought you would wait for us to self-destruct before appearing." Yi Xian looked at Jingji and smiled. "Why would I?" As he spoke, he turned to look at Yan Zhu. "How should I address you?" Yan Zhu looked at Yi Xian. "Yan Zhu, great elder of the divine race." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Elder Yan Zhu, this chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Elder, as far as I know, there is no deep hatred between the humans and the divine race. I feel that it is not impossible for the two races to coexist peacefully. What do you think?" Yan Zhu smiled and said, "In theory, it is possible. However, why should my divine race let you rise and become a threat to us?" Yi Xian looked at Yan Zhu. "As far as I know, The infinite universes do not know that the divine race is a universe, right? Yan Zhu looked at Yi Xian, but your human race was created by my divine race. Yi Xian nodded, I understand. Since we cannot coexist peacefully, then we will fight. Beside Yan Zhu, a divine general suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Boom! The sword light shattered, and the divine general was sent flying. Yan Zhu's expression gradually became solemn when he witnessed this scene. This divine general was a level 8 expert. How did Yi Xian's strength reach such a level in just a few days? The divine general wanted to attack again, but Yan Zhu suddenly said, Allow me. The divine general bowed slightly and then retreated to the side. Yan Zhu looked at Yi Xian, opened his palm, and then pressed down lightly. In an instant, the space around Yi Xian became illusory. Space-time suppression. Yi Xian stood there without moving, and he allowed the space around him to change. Meanwhile, Yan Zhu suddenly flipped his right hand. Bang! The space where Yi Xian resided was turned upside down, and then Yi Xian started to fall rapidly. The fourth space-time abyss. With a flip of his hand, Yi Xian was blasted into the space-time abyss. However, Yan Zhu frowned because he noticed that Yi Xian was actually completely fine. Moreover, the space-time abyss where Yi Xian resided was gradually becoming illusory. Yan Zhu's pupils constricted when he saw this. You've mastered the fourth space-time abyss. At this moment, Yi Xian had returned to the battlefield. He gazed at Yan Zhu and smiled, Take this. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. 1,800 overlapped sword-drawing techniques. This slash caused the space before him to shatter, and it didn't just shatter the first space-time abyss, even the third space-time abyss was shattered. A wisp of a solemn expression flashed in Yan Zhu's eyes when he witnessed this scene. He opened his right hand and pressed it down lightly. Bang! Yi Xian's sword light was directly suppressed by the pressure of the fourth space-time abyss. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Yan Zhu, and a wave of sword light instantly drowned him and Yan Zhu. Core sword domain. Bang! In an instant, the space where they resided was directly shattered. Even the fourth space-time abyss was directly shattered. In the fourth space-time abyss, Yan Zhu had retreated over 1 kilometer, and there were over 10 sword marks on his body. On the other hand, there was a palm print on Yi Xian's chest. Both of them had won and lost in this collision. Yan Zhu gazed at Yi Xian with disbelief in his eyes. You've actually mastered the fourth space-time abyss. At this moment, his heart was surging like a tidal wave. Yi Xian has actually mastered the fourth space-time abyss. How could this be possible? Yi Xian glanced at the battlefield. Besides Yan Zhu, the strongest amongst the other experts of the Divine Clan was only at the 8th space-time abyss. In other words, only Yan Zhu was a threat to him. Thinking of this, Yi Xian looked at Yan Zhu, and the next moment, he directly disappeared on the spot. In the distance, a trace of hostility flashed in Yan Zhu's eyes, and he suddenly pressed down with his right hand. Bang! With a loud explosion, Yan Zhu directly retreated, and in the process of his retreat, another flying sword slashed at him. Yan Zhu blasted out a punch, and the moment this punch blasted out, the entire starry sky trembled violently. Rumble! The flying sword was blasted away. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword flew back into his hand. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. He looked at Yan Zhu in the distance, and Yan Zhu slowly clenched his right hand. In an instant, the power of countless stars around him gathered towards him. For a moment, the entire starry sky trembled. Just as Yi Xian was about to draw his sword, Yan Zhu suddenly blasted out a punch, and this punch, countless stars gushed out from his fist. This punch gathered the power of thousands of galaxies. Yi Xian held his sword horizontally to block. Invincible sword domain. Rumble! The expanse of space that Yi Xian resided in was instantly obliterated, but Yi Xian was completely unharmed. His sword domain had forcefully resisted all the force of Yan Zhu's punch. A wisp of a complicated expression flashed through Yan Zhu's eyes when he witnessed this scene. He knew that he couldn't kill this human before him. Strictly speaking, the current Yi Xian was already a level 9 powerhouse. Coupled with the green profound sword in his hand and those formidable sword techniques, he couldn't do anything to Yi Xian at all. When he thought up to here, his clenched right hand relaxed, and he gazed at Yi Xian. In the past, we underestimated you, and my god clan paid a heavy price for that. But it won't happen again now. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a divine order appeared in his hand. In the next moment, the divine order shot into the sky. Bang! An extremely terrifying aura suddenly swept out from the starry sky. Meanwhile, Yanzhu spoke abruptly, "Greetings, ancestor." Ancestor? Yi Xian was stunned. Damn it! He's calling on our ancestor just like that? He summoned the ancestor just like that? Not only Yi Xian, but the other gods were stunned as well. They didn't expect that Grand Elder Yanzhu would directly summon the ancestor. This ancestor's soul was a trump card of the god clan. He used it just like that? Wasn't he thinking too highly of Yi Xian? Yi Xian's expression was slightly ugly. Damn it! We haven't even fought yet, and he's already summoned the ancestor. Who would use such a powerful move right away? He wasn't mentally prepared at all. At this moment, an old god appeared in the starry sky. Wuxian, the ancestor of the god clan. He was also the one who created the human race. A superpower who once stunned an era. Wuxian glanced around and he frowned. At this moment, countless gods knelt down in unison. "Greetings, ancestor." Wuxian looked at the gods below. "What's the matter?" As soon as this voice came out, the entire starry sky actually split apart. Seeing this scene, Shaoan and the others' expressions instantly became solemn. This space-time couldn't even withstand his voice? How terrifying was this? Even the woman in the plain dress wasn't this terrifying. The white-haired old man Lin Shan's expression was extremely solemn. This was a super big shot. In the distance, Yanzhu bowed respectfully, and then he said, "Ancestor, the human race has become a great disaster." A great disaster? Wuxian frowned slightly, and he turned to look at Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and then he said, "Him?" Yanzhu nodded. "Not just him, but the person behind him as well." Wuxian looked at Yi Xian, and after a moment, he shook his head. "The human race is still like an ant." As he spoke, he opened his right hand, and then he pressed it down lightly. As he pressed down, an extremely terrifying force swept down. A strength that surpassed level 9. This was a strength that surpassed level 9. And his target wasn't just Yi Xian, it was the entire human universe below. As soon as this palm descended, the entire human universe would collapse. By Yi Xian's side, the pale Jingji said in a trembling voice, "Young Master Yi, they called the ancestor first, you can do the same." End of this chapter. Chapter 1868. Summon the ancestor? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Summon my ass. Dad would love nothing more than for me to suffer." Call Qing'er? At this moment, he could no longer sense Qing'er's aura. Qing'er and my father should be very, very far away by now. He could only rely on himself. Yi Xian looked up at Wuxian in the starry sky and smiled. "I'll go first." As soon as he finished speaking, he stamped his right foot. The space collapsed, and he turned into a sword light that shot up into the sky. A ray of sword light tore through the starry sky. In the starry sky, a ray of sword light slashed against that powerful force. Boom! The sword light shattered, and Yi Xian fell straight into the abyss of space-time of the fourth layer. As he fell, the abyss of space-time actually distorted. In the abyss of space-time, Yi Xian opened his palm. The green profound sword flew to his feet and forcibly held him back. In the starry sky, that mysterious force was still falling straight down. If that force was allowed to fall completely, the entire human universe would be thrown into the abyss of space-time. One palm to destroy a universe. His opponent could really do it. And the ancestor of the divine human race in front of him was not someone he could contend with now. Was he really going to die? As he thought of this, Yi Xian suddenly laughed. If he was going to die, so be it. He stamped his right foot and turned into a ray of sword light that flew out of the fourth layer of spacetime and slashed at that powerful force. In the starry sky, Missouri Wuxian looked down at Yi Xian with an indifferent expression, as if he was looking at an ant. To him, humans were indeed like ants. In the starry sky, Yi Xian's sword once again slashed against that powerful force. However, he was unable to shake that powerful force. On the contrary, he was once again thrown into the abyss of spacetime. This time, his physical body exploded, leaving only his soul. The difference in strength was too great. In the starry sky, Missouri Wuxian looked down at Yi Xian in the abyss of spacetime. A mayfly trying to shake a tree. Yi Xian escaped from the spacetime abyss. He looked at Emma Wuxian and said with a smile, "Again." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack again. Meanwhile, Xiaoan appeared by his side, and Xiaoan looked at him and said, "If you attack again, you'll die." Right now, Yi Xian had already suffered very serious injuries. If he attacked again, he would undoubtedly die. The two of them were not on the same level at all. The ancestors of the divine race. Who was this person? That was a supergiant from who knows how many tens of thousands of years ago. Even if it was just a wisp of his soul, it was not something that Yi Xian could fight against. Yi Xian smiled and said, "If I die, then so be it." Xiaoan looked at Yi Xian for a moment before she smiled and said, "I'll go with you." As she spoke, she took the initiative to hold Yi Xian's hand. Meanwhile, Jingji suddenly said, "What are you talking about? Young Master Yi, they call your ancestors, you also call your ancestors." Yi Xian glanced at Jingji and said with a smile, "Miss Jingji, I can't call my ancestors, nor can I call anyone." Jingji's face was a little pale. "Are you serious?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Do I look like I'm lying?" After a moment of silence, Jingji said, "Farewell." After saying that, she turned around and disappeared at the end of the horizon. She had already escaped from the space-time of this universe, so naturally, she could escape from this human universe. In fact, she had wanted to leave this human universe for a long time. However, she was still willing to believe in the plain-dressed woman because she was the strongest person she had ever met. However, after seeing the ancestor of the divine race, she was a little shaken. Was this plain-dressed woman really as strong as the ancestor of the divine race? If so, why hadn't she appeared now? There was only one explanation for her not appearing, and that was fear. Therefore, she chose to escape. Seeing Jingji escape, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He did not blame Jingji, because everyone had the right to make their own choice. However, he was still a little surprised. There were some people who you thought were friends, but in fact, they weren't. Some people could only share wealth, but not trials and tribulations. Yi Xian turned to look at Xiaoan and smiled. "Actually, you can also leave." Xiaoan shook his head. "I've given you my heart. Where can I go?" Yi Xian was speechless. Lin Shan also smiled. "Looks like it's hard to escape today." Yi Xian looked at Lin Shan and smiled. "Senior Lin Shan, you can also leave." Lin Shan shook his head. "I owe you a favor, and this favor naturally has to be returned." He was able to break through again because of Yi Xian's help to break the seal. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, in the distant starry sky, the power suddenly boiled, and in an instant, the entire starry sky began to be annihilated bit by bit. This power's target was not just him, Yi Xian, but the entire human universe. And at this moment, this power was destroying the origin of this universe. It couldn't be defended. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Some things, even if one tried his best, might not have a good ending. Of course, he had a clear conscience. He had tried his best. Just then, Yanzhu suddenly said, "It looks like the woman in the plain dress that all of you have been waiting for will not appear." In fact, he had been waiting for the woman in the plain dress and the man in green to appear, and then he would capture them in one fell swoop. But now, it seemed that they would not appear. Below, Yi Xian looked up at the terrifying power, and the next moment, his soul began to burn. Soul ignition. Although he was no match for them, he would not sit and wait for death. Even if he were to die, he would die in battle. Just as Yi Xian was about to make a move, a shocked voice suddenly came from the distant sky. Wait! Young master, you wait. When he heard this, Yi Xian looked up into the distant sky. The space there suddenly split open, and then a middle-aged man flew out. It was none other than the emperor. The emperor shuddered when he saw that Yi Xian was burning his soul, and he hurriedly appeared in front of Yi Xian and slapped his palm against Yi Xian's shoulder. Bang! The flames on Yi Xian's body vanished. Yi Xian was puzzled. Senior, you are? The emperor hurriedly said, What do you mean by senior? I'm a few years older than you. If you don't mind, I'll call you Big Brother. Big Brother? Yi Xian was stunned. You're a few years older than me, and I'm calling you Big Brother? Is there something wrong with that? Suddenly, Yan Zhu said from afar, Your Majesty? Yan Zhu turned around to look at the Grand Elder and roared with laughter, That's me. Yan Zhu gazed at the emperor. You intend to help this human? The emperor smiled. Is there a problem? Yan Zhu stared at the emperor. Why? The emperor roared with laughter. Because he's my big brother. Big brother? Yi Xian was confused. Senior, do we know each other? The emperor looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Didn't we just get to know each other? Yi Xian was speechless. Just then, the horrifying energy in the starry sky began to disappear bit by bit. Mo Wuxian frowned when he saw this, and he turned around to look. There was an old man standing not too far away. It was the governor of Huang City. Yan Zhu's face darkened at the sight of the old man. Why was this old man here as well? And by the looks of it, he was here to help Yi Xian. The governor looked down at Yi Xian and smiled. Young Master Yi? Yi Xian asked in a low voice. Senior, do you know Qing? The governor's eyelid twitched. The woman in the plain dress? Yi Xian nodded. She's Qing. Desolate City's city lord smiled. Yes. Yi Xian understood now. No wonder he came to help. Mo Wuxian suddenly said, Since when did the fairies side with the humans? The governor looked at Mo Wuxian. Since this moment. Mo Wuxian shook his head and smiled. How laughable. I never thought you fairies would lower yourselves to mingle with humans. How laughable. If your ancestor finds out, I wonder if he'll die from anger. The governor smiled. You don't have to worry about that. Mo Wuxian stared at the governor. Let me see if you can protect this human today. As he spoke, he suddenly flipped his hand and pressed down. Boom. In an instant, the space-time around the governor collapsed and he fell to the bottom of the space-time abyss. Endless space-time pressure pressed down on him, about to crush him. The governor shook his head with a smile. He was slightly worried that the ancestor's strength was even more terrifying than the woman in the plain dress. But now it seemed like he was weaker than the woman in the plain dress. Because the ancestor was still playing with the space-time Dao. When the woman in the plain dress attacked him, he couldn't feel what power she used. Obviously, the woman in the plain dress's cultivation was higher than the ancestor's. Without giving it much thought, the desolate city lord flicked his sleeves. In an instant, the space-time abyss around him actually became illusory bit by bit. In the next moment, he had already appeared in front of Mo Wuxian, and in the next moment, he punched out. The space-time around Mo Wuxian transformed into a strange vortex, and Mo Wuxian's entire body became distorted. A space-time vortex. It changed the structure of the fourth layer of space-time. Yi Xian's face turned solemn. So the fourth layer of space-time could be played like this. A wisp of ridicule appeared on the corners of Mo Wuxian's mouth as he stood in the depths of the spatial vortex. He flicked his sleeve, and the surrounding space instantly returned to normal. Meanwhile, the governor's punch arrived. Mo Wuxian pointed out with a finger, and a ray of white light flashed on the tip of his finger. Bang! An explosion resounded, and the governor retreated a few hundred meters. He was at a slight disadvantage. The city lord of Desolation City laughed and rushed out again. At this moment, Yan Zhu suddenly looked at Yi Xian from below. All gods, listen up. Kill this man. As soon as he finished speaking, he was the first to charge out. On the other hand, all the experts of the God clan by his side charged out as well. All of them had a single target, and it was Yi Xian. Obviously, Yan Zhu wanted to kill Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face darkened. Damn it! The God clan really thinks too highly of me. Not only did they summon their ancestor, but they also want to gang up on me. Meanwhile, the emperor glanced at Yi Xian, and then he hurriedly stood in front of Yi Xian and said furiously, "If you want to kill my big brother, then you must step over my emperor's corpse." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1869. Hearing the emperor's words, Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. At the same time, he felt a surge of warmth in his heart. He knew that the emperor was not doing this for Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not have that kind of influence. The emperor was doing this for Qing. Yi Xian could not help but sigh. Was he really a second-generation heir? Right at this moment, the space in the surroundings suddenly split open, and then numerous powerful auras surged out. Not long after, dozens of mysterious experts appeared in the surroundings, blocking the divine race's experts. In the starry sky, Yan Zhu's face instantly sank when he saw this. So many cultivators were helping Yi Xian. Yan Zhu stared at the emperor in front of Yi Xian. "Emperor, as far as I know, you are friends with an elder of the god tribe. Why are you doing this?" The emperor smiled. "Justice is in the hearts of men. The god tribe has committed such inhumane acts. Anyone with the slightest sense of justice would not sit by and watch." "You?" Yan Zhu flew into a rage. T. "Emperor, you slaughtered millions of lives for your own selfish reasons. Now you're talking about justice? Where's your dignity?" The emperor's smile turned cold. "I'll make this clear. Young Master Yi is my big brother. If the god tribe wants to touch him, they'll have to do it over my dead body." Yi Xian was speechless. Yan Zhu's face trembled with anger. "Emperor, you're a 9th-rank cultivator after all. How dare you call a human your big brother? Aren't you afraid that everyone in the universe will laugh at you?" The emperor chuckled. "Laugh at me? If they think I'm stupid, then laugh all you want. I don't care." Yan Zhu stared at the emperor. "Is it because of that woman in a plain dress?" The emperor laughed and was about to speak when he remembered something. He frowned. "You're stalling for time." As soon as he finished speaking, the starry sky behind Yan Zhu suddenly trembled. In the next moment, countless experts of the god clan charged out. The entire tribe had come out. Among them, there were a total of 4 Phase 9 powerhouses, and the god clan's patriarch, Mo Yen, was among them. The emperor's face darkened when he saw this. He didn't expect Yan Zhu to be so ruthless. This was almost the power of the entire divine human race. Yan Zhu looked at the emperor. "What did that plainly dressed woman give you that you're willing to go against the divine clan for a human?" At this moment, Mo Wuxian's voice suddenly came from the distant starry sky. "Don't ask for the reason. Since you've made an enemy of the divine humans, then kill you." Yan Zhu still wanted to say something, but Mo Yen suddenly said, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, the divine race experts behind him charged towards Yi Xian's group. Next to Yi Xian, Emperor Jun said solemnly, "Young Master Yi, be careful." As he spoke, he took a step forward. A powerful force swept out from his body like a volcanic eruption. His Majesty stopped the 2 9th phase divine humans right away. Meanwhile, Mo Yen charged at Yi Xian. However, he just made a move when an old man blocked his way. It was Jing Yu of the fairy race. Jing Yu looked at Mo Yen. In the next moment, countless strange green talismans appeared around Mo Yen. Mo Yan's eyes narrowed slightly. The Tao of talismans. Is the fairy race really going to go against the divine clan for a human? Jing Yu nodded. Yes. Mo Yen was slightly puzzled. Why? Jing Yu fell silent for a moment before he said, "Our intelligence isn't on the same level. I can't answer you." Mo Yen was furious. "How dare you insult me?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Rumble. The starry sky around Jing Yu transformed into a vortex, but it returned to normal in the blink of an eye. At the same time, the strange green talismans formed a space-time cage that trapped Mo Yen within. Mo Yan's face turned solemn. Meanwhile, Grand Elder Yan Zhu charged at Yi Xian. However, he just arrived in front of Yi Xian when a fairy race old man blocked his way. This fairy race old man was a 9th rank expert as well. Yan Zhu's face instantly sank when he saw the old man. At this moment, he felt even more uneasy. The fairy race is doing its best to help Yi Xian. But it's definitely because of that woman in a plain dress. What on earth did the woman in the simple dress use to make the entire elf race give their all to help Yi Xian? According to his thoughts, he should stop fighting for now and figure this out. Unfortunately, the situation had developed to this point, and it was no longer within his control. After Yan Zhu was blocked, Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings. He noticed that the divine race didn't have any more 9th rank experts. Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. In the distant horizon, the head of a divine general flew into the air. Instant kill. Experts below the 9th rank couldn't withstand a single strike of Yi Xian's. After killing a divine general with a single strike, Yi Xian didn't stop and slashed once more. In next to no time, the heads of some divine race experts flew into the air in succession. It was like slaughtering chickens. Yan Zhu's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly said, "Stop that fellow, Yi Xian." However, at this moment, no one in the divine race could stop Yi Xian at all. Right at this moment, a world-shaking explosion suddenly resounded in the distant starry sky, and then an old man retreated repeatedly. It was the city governor of Desolation City who was fighting Mo Wuxian. After he repulsed the city governor with a single strike, Mo Wuxian suddenly gazed at Yi Xian, and then he pointed his finger forward. Yi Xian suddenly raised his head, drew his sword, and slashed. Life and death were decided by drawing the sword. Rumble! Along with an expanse of sword light shattering, Yi Xian fell directly into the spatial abyss of the 4th level. Mo Wuxian was just about to attack again when the city governor suddenly appeared in front of him. Mo Wuxian's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're courting death." As soon as he finished speaking, he smashed his fist forward. The city governor smashed his fist forward as well. Both of them were very simple punches. As soon as their fists collided, the expanse of space they were in was instantly obliterated. The city governor retreated once more. Mo Wuxian gazed at the city governor. "Do you want your spirit race to be annihilated?" The city governor smiled and said, "My spirit race will protect this young Master Yi." Mo Wuxian stared at the city governor. "I'm not dead." The city governor fell silent. Mo Wuxian's main body wasn't dead. Mo Wuxian continued, "I'll give you one last chance. If you leave with your spirit race's experts now, then I'll let bygones be bygones out of consideration for your spirit race's ancestors. But if you insist on helping this human, then I guarantee that your spirit race will be slaughtered by my divine race." The city governor smiled and said, "My spirit race will protect this young Master Yi." Mo Wuxian gazed at the city governor, and then he shook his head. "Your actions are slightly difficult for me to understand." The city governor laughed. "There's no need to understand. Mo Wuxian, if you have the ability, then annihilate my spirit race today. Otherwise, my spirit race will live and die with young Master Yi." Mo Wuxian nodded. "I'll fulfill your wish." As soon as he finished speaking, his body began to slowly turn illusory. Seeing this, the city governor frowned. Was he going to disappear? Very quickly, he seemed to have thought of something. His pupils constricted. Mo Wuxian was going to come with his main body. On the other side, Yan Zhu and the others also noticed this. When Yan Zhu realized that Mo Wuxian was going to come with his main body, he heaved a sigh of relief. Now that things had developed to such a drastic change, only Mo Wuxian's main body could completely deal with Yi Xian and the others. Mo Yen and the others stopped as well. They were all 9th stage experts. In a short period of time, no one could kill the other. Now, they only needed to wait for their ancestor's main body to come. Then, everything would be over. The city governor's face darkened. He hadn't expected that the situation would develop to such an extent. Not only had the god race summoned their ancestor as soon as they arrived, Mo Wuxian was even going to come with his main body. They were determined to annihilate Yi Xian. The emperor walked over to the city governor's side and spoke in a low voice. How long will it take for them to get here? The city governor shook his head. I don't know. But it shouldn't be too long. The emperor asked. What should we do? The city governor shook his head again. I don't know. This ancestor of the god race was able to suppress him with just a strand of his soul. So, if the ancestor's main body arrived, then he would definitely be unable to defeat the ancestor. Because it was very likely that the ancestor was a 10th stage expert. When he thought up to here, the city governor's expression grew even more solemn. Meanwhile, Yixian suddenly said, Seniors. The emperor and the city governor gazed at Yixian. Yixian cupped his fists and said, I, Yixian, will forever remember your help just now. The emperor smiled. It's a small matter. Yixian shook his head. To me, it's a matter of life and death. Seniors, please go back. The matter between me and the divine human race will be settled by us. He didn't take their help for granted. The city governor hesitated for a moment and said, My young friend, if Imo Wuxian's main body arrives, then we really won't be able to stop him. May I know if you can contact that senior in a plain dress? Yixian shook his head. No. The city governor sighed in his heart. Meanwhile, the emperor spoke abruptly, She won't stand by idly. The city governor fell silent. At this moment he was slightly hesitant. Should I make a bigger bet? Now, Yixian owed him a favor. But if he left with the soul race right now, then it wouldn't be a huge favor, and the benefits he would obtain in the future would definitely be limited. On the other hand, if he stayed behind to face Imo Wuxian with Yixian, then he would owe him a huge favor. Of course, the risk was huge as well. If the woman in a plain dress really didn't show up, then all of them would really die. Moreover, even if the woman in a plain dress did show up, if she wasn't a match for Imo Wuxian, then all of them would be dead. Should I make a bet? At this moment, the city governor was extremely conflicted. Suddenly, the emperor smiled and said, I'll stay. The city governor gazed at the emperor. The emperor fell silent for a moment before he said, Old geezer, how do you feel when you face Imo Wuxian? The city governor replied, Formidable. The emperor asked, What about when you face senior in a plain dress? The city governor's face turned slightly unsightly. He was terrified when he faced the woman in a plain dress. At this point, the city governor suddenly smiled and said, I, Jingyan, have lived for 8 million years. If I can't improve, then what's the point of living for another million years? As he spoke, he gazed at Yixian and roared with laughter. My young friend, the soul race will live or die with you today. If we live, then please put in a good word for us in the future and ask her to guide us. The old man and the soul race will be eternally grateful. If we die, then everything will be over. He made the bet. Not only was he risking his life, but he was also risking the lives of his entire race. Chapter 1870. The emperor was shocked. He didn't expect the old man to bet so much that he even brought the entire fairy race with him. This was a bit too much. Of course, wasn't the emperor a bit too much? He wasn't confident that he would win, but he didn't regret it. What he felt when facing the woman was fear that came from the depths of his heart. His instincts told him to trust the woman. At the side, Yixian had a complicated look on his face. He knew that the reason why these two dared to bet so much was because of Qing'er. Yixian looked into space. To be honest, with a sister like her, was there really a need for him to fight? Was there? For the first time, he felt that he might as well just be a second-generation heir. He didn't want to fight anymore. Just then, the entire galaxy was stirred. The true gods in the distance were excited at the sight of this. He's here. Their ancestor is here. Everyone looked into space. In the faraway galaxy, the entire galaxy was boiling like boiling water. Time and space were distorted. The person hadn't arrived, but the force was there. Just the force alone was enough to make the universe unbearable. If the deity himself came, wouldn't the universe collapse? Looking at the seething starry sky in the distance, Yixian also looked extremely serious. So powerful. This was definitely beyond the 9th rank. At this moment, small towers suddenly sighed softly. Yixian was confused. What are you sighing about? Xiaota said, Young master, I'm starting to feel sorry for you. Yixian frowned. Sorry for what? Xiaota said in a low voice. I realize that no matter how hard you work, there will always be a super enemy who is many times stronger than you. And this enemy is definitely someone you can't beat. Yixian, Xiaota continued, I suddenly feel that something is wrong with Master's methods. He wants to train you, but he hasn't considered that your enemy is not normal. I've said before that Master killed his way to the top, but I've neglected one problem. That was, he could kill his enemies. But young lord, you can't. Many times, even if you activate your bloodline and ignite your soul, you still can't kill your enemies. At this point, it paused for a moment and said, Young master, you're really tragic. Yixian was speechless. Xiaota continued, Indeed, master rarely relies on others. However, other than Sister Tianming, there are very few enemies that are much stronger than him. But you, young master, are different. Your enemies are often many times stronger than you. Speaking of which, young lord, don't you have any opinion on this? Yixian said indifferently, What do you think I would think? Xiaota said, Tell master. Get him to help. Yixian shook his head. I used to think it was unfair, but now, I don't think so anymore. Xiaota was puzzled. But Yixian smiled and said, In this world there are far too many people who encounter injustice. Who are they going to complain to? If there's anyone to blame, then blame it on me, Yixian, for not being strong enough. And one more thing, father has given me a lot. Without him, Xiaota said, Without him, you still have Sister Tianming. Yixian was speechless. This small pagoda was trying to rebel against his father. At this moment, the entire universe suddenly became illusory. The universe was about to shatter. Seeing this, the Lord of Desolation City's face turned extremely solemn. The smile on the emperor's face disappeared without a trace. Mo Wuxian, the ancestor of the divine humans, was here. Mo Wuxian was not the first true god of the divine humans, but the rise of the divine humans was due to him. Therefore, the divine humans respected him as their ancestor because he was the one who brought the divine humans to glory. At this moment, a ray of white light suddenly fell into the starry sky. The white light dissipated and a middle-aged man appeared before everyone's eyes. Countless gods fell to their knees. Greetings, ancestor. Ancestor. It was the ancestor of the divine humans, Mo Wuxian. And it was his real body that had come. His real body. The moment he saw Mo Wuxian, the Lord of Desolation City slowly closed his eyes. The 10th rank expert, Mo Wuxian, had surpassed the 9th rank. Mo Wuxian's gaze descended onto the Lord of Desolation City, and he slowly pressed his right hand down. The Lord of Desolation City opened his eyes, and a wisp of ferocity flashed through them as he shot into the sky. Bang! Everywhere the Lord of Desolation City passed, space and time distorted. Mo Wuxian's right hand suddenly descended. Bang! The Lord of Desolation City fell directly into the 4th layer of the spatial abyss, and his body was completely shattered. He was instantly killed. The countenances of all the experts from the demon race had turned pale when they witnessed this scene. We're finished. That was the only thought in their minds. On the other side, the true gods of the divine race became excited. The ancestor is invincible. The ancestor is invincible. For a time, countless experts of the true god race roared madly. Their voices were so loud that it was like thunder, and it spread through tens of thousands of galaxies. At this moment, all the experts in the boundless universe looked over. The 10th rank expert? All the experts were horrified. In an unknown galaxy, a swordsman suddenly stopped in front of a white starry hole. The swordsman wore a long white robe, and he held a sword in his hand. The swordsman turned around and frowned. Who is calling himself invincible? He was a little displeased. Last time, he met someone who called himself invincible, But what happened? That person was as weak as an ant, and he made a wasted trip. Now, someone called himself invincible, and he made such a big fuss. After a moment of silence, the swordsman looked at the white starry hole. Wait a moment. With that, he turned and disappeared. Not just anyone could call himself invincible. It was fine if he didn't hear it. But if he heard it, he had to see it. In another galaxy, Wuxian looked at the Lord of Desolation City, who no longer had a body. I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. Now, let me ask you, do you regret it? Regret? The Lord of Desolation City laughed. What's there to regret? Isn't it just a life? Just come and take it. Wuxian nodded slightly. You have some backbone, I'll grant you your wish. With that, his right hand slowly pressed down. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above the Lord of Desolation City. He looked straight at Wuxian, and without a word, he shot up into the sky. Wuxian was expressionless. And, with that, his right hand pressed down. Boom! The sword light shattered, and Yi Xian fell from the sky. Like the Lord of Desolation City, he fell into the space-time abyss again. If not for the green profound sword, the space-time abyss would have swallowed his soul. Inside the space-time abyss, Yi Xian's soul became illusory. He was no match for him. Not to mention that he wasn't a real 9th rank expert yet. Even if he was, he wouldn't be a match for Wuxian. The gap between them was too huge. Wuxian looked down at Yi Xian. I never imagined that the human race would actually develop to such a level. I really hadn't expected this. Yi Xian gazed at Wuxian and smiled. There are many more that you can't imagine. Wuxian stared at Yi Xian. Just now, my clansman told me that there are 2 formidable humans behind you. Since that's the case, why don't you let them meet you? Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, I can't contact them. When he spoke up to hear, he gazed at Wuxian. Since you're so strong, why don't you contact them yourself? Wuxian chuckled. Contact them myself? Yi Xian nodded. Since you're so strong, you'll definitely be able to contact them. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the green profound sword flew over to Wuxian. This is Qing sword. I think that with your extraordinary ability, you should be able to contact her through this sword. Wuxian was about to speak when Grand Elder Yan Zhu spoke abruptly. Ancestor, I'm afraid it's a trap. Wuxian glanced at Grand Elder Yan Zhu. All of you remember that when your strength reaches a certain level, you can disregard all schemes and plots. Yan Zhu fell silent. There was nothing wrong with that. Once one's strength reached a certain level, would one still have to fear schemes and plots? Wuxian gazed at the green profound sword, and he instantly frowned when he saw it. In the next moment, he opened his right palm, and the sword fell into his grasp. As he looked at it, his brows furrowed. Who forged this sword? Yi Xian gazed at Wuxian. You can use this sword to find the person who forged it. Wuxian gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. Ignorant human, this sword is extraordinary indeed. However, that's all there is to it. You actually foolishly think that the person who forged it can save you. That's not just laughable, it's pitiful. As he spoke, the sword in his right hand shook slightly. Bang! The sword shook violently, and then a sword howl shot into the sky. At the same time, a ray of white light shot into the depths of the starry sky. He directly utilized the sword to open up a spatial passageway, to search for the woman in a plain dress. He traversed countless spaces with a single thought. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at Wuxian. A rank 10 expert. That's a rank 10 expert. Could that woman in a plain dress compare to him? In the sky, Missouri Wuxian suddenly gazed at Yi Xian, and he grinned. Human, I'll let you see what strength is. You know nothing about strength. If the person behind you appears later, then they'll fall into despair. Because I'm an invincible existence in this boundless universe. Invincible in the truest sense of the word. Invincible? Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from the distant horizon. Everyone turned around and saw a swordsman in a cloud white robe walking over slowly from afar. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw the person who'd arrived. Damn it! What's this big brother doing here? Wuxian gazed at the swordsman, and he instantly frowned when he saw the swordsman. I can't see through him. He's actually unable to see through this human. The swordsman glanced at Yi Xian, and then he grinned. I never expected that we'd meet again. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Big brother, what are you doing here? The swordsman smiled. I heard someone say he's invincible, so I'm here. Yi Xian was about to speak when Xiaota suddenly said, Big sister Tianming often says she's invincible as well. Why don't you go look for her? The swordsman was slightly stunned, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. Do you still want this pagoda? If you don't, I can destroy it for you. A single strike of my sword is enough. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiaota was speechless. Chapter 1871. Yi Xian was speechless. Ever since Qing had transformed Xiaota, he'd become extraordinarily arrogant. Suddenly, Wuxian said, Who are you? Swordsman turned around to gaze at Wuxian and grinned. Are you talking about being invincible? Wuxian gazed at Swordsman. Is there a problem? Swordsman nodded. Yes. Wuxian's eyes narrowed slightly. Swordsman, you really aren't simple. However, Swordsman suddenly interrupted Wuxian. There's no need to talk about it. Take this. As soon as he finished speaking, he drew his sword and slashed. Simple and direct. Wuxian's pupils constricted when he saw this attack. At this moment he sensed danger. How can this human's brain be so strong? This thought flashed through his mind, but he didn't have the time to think about it. He took a step forward and smashed his fist down. At the instant his fist struck out, the first to fourth layers of space overlapped, and then they formed an extremely terrifying spatial pressure. However, as soon as Swordsman's sword slashed down, the formidable spatial pressure suddenly collapsed. Everyone watched as a sword pierced directly into the center of Wuxian's forehead. Bang! Wuxian's body instantly collapsed into pieces, and his soul was locked down tightly by a sword. At this moment, the minds of everyone here had gone blank. Ancestor Wuxian was killed by a sword just like that? The emperor who stood by Yi Xian's side gulped, and then he said, Big brother, this swordsman is your big brother? Yi Xian nodded. The emperor immediately said, If he's your big brother, then he's my big brother. Yi Xian was speechless. Swordsman glanced at Wuxian, who was slightly dazed, and then he shook his head while a trace of disappointment flashed through his eyes. Don't say that you're invincible in your next life. Wuxian gazed at Swordsman with eyes filled with disbelief. How could a human be so strong? The swordsman did not answer Wuxian. He turned to look at Yi Xian. Kid, I have to go. Yi Xian quickly asked, Big brother, where are you going? Swordsman smiled and said, Go wherever the danger is. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Wuxian suddenly roared, You are all living beings that I created. How can you be stronger than me? This is impossible. Swordsman glanced at Wuxian, a little puzzled. Isn't being defeated a good thing? Do you know how much I want to be defeated? This feeling of being invincible is really lonely. Do you understand? Wuxian, everyone. Swordsman looked at Yi Xian. Kid, don't be afraid of failure. Every time you fail, it means that you can improve. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then said, Losing once or twice is a good thing, but being defeated frequently isn't a good thing. Swordsman smiled and said, Indeed. But this feeling of being invincible is really lonely. Yi Xian said, Actually, I really want to experience this kind of loneliness. Swordsman was stunned, and then he smiled and said, Then you have to work hard. Yi Xian smiled and said, Big brother, can you help me with a small thing? Swordsman nodded. Yi Xian glanced at the Lord and Emperor of Barren City in the distance. Big brother, these two friends of mine have reached their limits. I wonder if you can give them some guidance? Hearing this, the Lord and Emperor of Barren City were instantly excited. Damn it! They didn't sell their lives for nothing. Swordsman glanced at them, and then he shook his head. I can't give them any guidance. Yi Xian was a little confused. Why not? Swordsman looked at the sword in his hand. I only train in the way of the sword, nothing else. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian frowned. Only train in the way of the sword? Swordsman nodded. That's right. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Big brother, do you know about the fifth dimension? Swordsman shook his head. I don't. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He didn't know? Yi Xian was shocked. Big brother, you don't know anything else apart from the way of the sword? Swordsman smiled. That's right. Yi Xian was silent. Swordsman. This big brother was a pure swordsman. A man who had trained swordsmen to the extreme. Hearing Swordsman's words, the governor and the emperor were a little disappointed. This swordsman in front of them was not just an ordinary person. Unfortunately, he only trained in the way of the sword, and they weren't swordsmen. In other words, he couldn't give them any guidance. At this time, Swordsman said, as far as I know, Tianming seems to be good at this. You can ask her to guide your friends in the future. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. That's the only way. Swordsman nodded. They're still waiting for me. I have to go. Yi Xian quickly asked, Qing and Papa? Swordsman smiled. Yes. Yi Xian frowned. You've formed a group? Swordsman said, not really. We're just walking together for a while and we'll talk about it. You know what I mean. Yi Xian's expression became solemn. You won't get into a fight, right? Swordsman thought for a moment and said, I don't think so. Because we can't kill each other for now. Yi Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. Swordsman was about to speak when Mo Wuxian suddenly said fiercely, Human! Swordsman looked at Mo Wuxian. Mo Wuxian was slightly mad. Do you think you'll win for sure? Swordsman was quite happy. What other trump cards do you have? Come on, hurry up and use them. Mo Wuxian opened his right hand. There was a small command token in his hand, and it rose slowly before transforming into a flame that vanished into the depths of the starry sky. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Don't tell me you're going to summon your ancestor as well? Mo Wuxian glanced coldly at Yi Xian. Ignorant ant, the swordsman suddenly drew his sword. Slapped. A ray of sword light swept across Mo Wuxian's soul. Mo Wuxian's entire soul trembled violently before it became illusory. Swordsman gazed at Mo Wuxian. Be more polite to my little brother. Mo Wuxian was speechless. Right at this moment, the distant depths of the starry skies suddenly trembled violently, and then an enormous starship appeared above them. A group of extremely strange living beings stood on the starship. These living beings seemed like skeletons, and they were tall and huge. Every single one of them emanated strange runes that flowed through their bodies. It was an extremely strange sight. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What living beings are they? Right at this moment, the desolate city lord suddenly exclaimed in shock. They're otherworldly demons. Otherworldly demons. The emperor's expression instantly changed drastically when he heard this. Yi Xian gazed at the two of them. What race are these otherworldly demons? The desolate city lord's face was slightly pale. Little friend, you might not know this, but the otherworldly demons were once living beings of this boundless universe. They were a level 3 civilization, but they surpassed the limits of their race in the end and became a level 4 civilization. After that, they left this boundless universe. Level 4 civilization. Yi Xian fell silent. He knew that the god race was a level 3 civilization, and in this boundless universe, there were no level 4 civilizations. In the distance, Mo Wuxian bowed respectfully to the group of otherworldly demons, and then he began to mumble something. No one understood him, not even the god race. However, the more Mo Wuxian spoke, the more agitated he became. Not only that, he even pointed at swordsmen from time to time. At this moment, that starship. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. One of the otherworldly demons on the starship looked at Swordsman. He looked at Swordsman for a moment, and then he bowed slightly. Then he opened his palm, and a ball of light slowly floated out from his palm. Finally, It landed in front of Swordsman. At the same time, that otherworldly demon placed his right hand on his chest and bowed respectfully again. Seeing this scene, everyone present was dumbfounded. Wuxian himself was dumbfounded. At this moment, his entire soul was trembling. The others might not understand the meaning of these otherworldly demons, but he did. The otherworldly demons only respected powerful beings, and the otherworldly demons gave Swordsman the ball of light as a gift to express their goodwill. Why would the otherworldly demons do this? There was only one explanation, and that was that Swordsman made these otherworldly demons feel threatened. It's over. This was the thought in Wuxian's mind. Swordsman glanced at the ball of light in front of him, and he frowned. He looked at the leading otherworldly demon. Are we not going to fight? The leading otherworldly demon immediately shook his head. He bowed respectfully again, and then he took out another ball of light. That ball of light slowly floated in front of Swordsman. Beside Yi Xian, the emperor said softly, as expected of a race from a higher civilization, their intelligence is really high. At this moment, Yi Xian walked in front of Swordsman. He glanced at the two balls of light, and then said, "Big brother, do you want them?" Swordsman looked at Yi Xian. "Do you?" Yi Xian's face reddened, but he quickly recovered. He took the two balls of light in his hand. "I'm just a little curious." Swordsman laughed. "If you like them, I'll give them to you." Yi Xian quickly said, "How can I accept them?" Even so, he had already put the two balls of light away. The crowd was speechless. After putting away the balls of light, Yi Xian walked to the front of the starship. At this moment, the otherworldly demons were looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian pointed at Swordsman below. "My big brother." The leading otherworldly demon hesitated for a moment, then took out another ball of light and handed it to Yi Xian. At the same time, a voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "Sir, please tell your big brother that the otherworldly demon race has no intention of making an enemy out of him." Yi Xian looked at the otherworldly demon. "Is my big brother very strong?" The leading otherworldly demon glanced at Yi Xian. "Can't you feel it?" Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then asked, "How strong is he?" The otherworldly demon was silent for a moment, then said, "I can't tell." "Can't tell." Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "My big brother has no intention of making an enemy out of the otherworldly demon race. Not only that, he is willing to befriend the otherworldly demon race." Hearing this, the leading otherworldly demon was elated. "Really?" Yi Xian nodded. "He said that the otherworldly demon race is a very powerful race, and he wants me to befriend you, but I don't know if you are sincere." The otherworldly demon glanced at Swordsman, then looked at Yi Xian. "Damn it. This human is trying to fool me." The otherworldly demon was silent for a moment, then he took out a token and handed it to Yi Xian. "Human sir, this is the otherworldly spirit token. With this token, you can come to the otherworldly demon race at any time." Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. "Oh no, I don't want it. If you want to give it to me, give it to my big brother." The otherworldly demon's expression froze. Giving this human a otherworldly spirit token was actually enough. But if he gave it to Swordsman, a otherworldly spirit token? How could he take out such a trashy thing? He hesitated for a moment, then said, "Sir, please wait a moment, I will ask the Patriarch." If he gave it to Swordsman, a otherworldly spirit token was definitely not enough, and he could not give him anything better. He had to ask the Patriarch. Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's fine, we can wait a moment." The otherworldly demon. End of this chapter. Chapter 1872. The otherworldly demon looked at Yi Xian with a strange expression. This human. At this moment, Swordsman walked to Yi Xian's side and smiled. "With your status, why do you need to make friends with the otherworldly demons?" Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Father doesn't care about me, I can only rely on my own efforts to survive." The green-robed man, Swordsman thought for a moment, then looked at the otherworldly demon. "Where is the otherworldly demon tribe?" The otherworldly demon's expression changed drastically. He quickly said, "Your Excellency, the otherworldly demon tribe has no intention of becoming enemies with Your Excellency. This time, it is purely a misunderstanding." As soon as his voice fell, the space in front of him suddenly trembled, and the next moment, an otherworldly demon walked out. This otherworldly demon was wearing a golden yellow robe and a golden crown on his head. Seeing this person, all the otherworldly demons in the field hurriedly bowed respectfully. The otherworldly demon king. The otherworldly demon king's gaze fell on Swordsman. Swordsman did not waste any time and raised his sword. The otherworldly demon king's pupils suddenly shrank, and his right hand pressed forward lightly. Boom! In an instant, endless space-time pressure suddenly swept over. The space-time pressure of the fifth layer. Yi Xian's expression was a little grave. At first, he thought that Mo Wuxian had mastered the fifth layer, but in fact, that was not the case. Mo Wuxian had only combined the first and fourth layers. However, this was still terrifying. But the other party had not mastered the fifth layer. And the otherworldly demon king before him had truly mastered the fifth layer. Countless overlapping space-time forces crushed toward Swordsman's sword light. At this moment, the entire human universe trembled. However, when the space-time pressure touched Swordsman's sword light, boom, all the space-time pressure disappeared, and at the same time, a sword was pressed against the otherworldly demon king's forehead. Defeated. On the other side, Mo Wuxian, who hadn't died yet, started trembling when he saw this scene. In front of Swordsman, the otherworldly demon king was silent for a moment, then bowed slightly. "I lost." Keeping his sword, Swordsman looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Little guy, they are still waiting for me. See you later." Saying this, he turned and left, disappearing in the distant Star River Pure Land in the blink of an eye. Gone. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. This big brother, he came fast and left fast. The otherworldly demon king suddenly walked up to Yi Xian. He opened his palm, and a golden ring slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. Spirit ring. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. The otherworldly demon king smiled. The otherworldly demon king chuckled softly. Spirit ring. Seeing this ring is equivalent to seeing me. All otherworldly demons who see this ring have to obey my commands unconditionally. Ring, Xian said, demon king of. Our otherworldly demonic tribe is willing to be on good terms with mankind for all eternity. Yi Xian kept the spirit ring and smiled. The human race is also willing to be friends with the otherworldly demon race. The otherworldly demon king nodded, then turned to Mo Wuxian. Kill. As soon as he finished his words, the otherworldly demons behind him charged at the God Clan experts. Before the divine race masters could react, their bodies were destroyed bit by bit. They were powerless to fight back. This was civilization suppression. Mo Wuxian suddenly laughed. Ridiculous, really ridiculous. I never thought that the 800 trillion years of history of the divine race would be destroyed by the humans I created. Yan Zhu suddenly said with a trembling voice, Young Master Yi, please show mercy. Yi Xian, this chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Looking at Yan Zhu hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, Yi Xian suddenly asked, will you let the humans go? Yan Zhu's expression froze. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the cyan profound sword in his hand suddenly sank into Mo Wuxian's forehead. Boom! Mo Wuxian's soul was directly absorbed by the cyan profound sword, and at the same time, the cyan profound sword flew into the group of divine race masters. With the help of the otherworldly demons, in a few short breaths, Yi Xian's cyan profound sword had absorbed all the souls of the divine race masters. Xiao Hun shouted excitedly, Young Master, it's a great tonic. A great tonic. Yi Xian smiled, I should be able to break through, right? Xiao Hun hurriedly said, Yes. Yi Xian nodded. At this time, the otherworldly demon king suddenly looked at the cyan profound sword. He hesitated for a moment, then said, Can I have a look at it? Yi Xian nodded, and with a thought, the cyan profound sword flew in front of the otherworldly demon king. The otherworldly demon king looked at the cyan profound sword and seemed to discover something. His eyes suddenly narrowed. This, Yi Xian was a little curious. Did you discover something? The otherworldly demon king looked at Yi Xian. Was this sword forged by that senior just now? Yi Xian shook his head. The otherworldly demon king was taken aback, then said, someone else. Yi Xian nodded. The otherworldly demon king looked deeply at Yi Xian, then passed the cyan profound sword to Yi Xian. Young friend, my otherworldly demon race will be holding a divine item exhibition in 3 days. I would like to invite you to participate. Yi Xian frowned. Divine item exhibition? The otherworldly demon king nodded. There will be many divine items appearing at that time. Everyone can exchange and discuss with each other, and also trade with each other. Yi Xian was a little hesitant. Given his current strength, if the cyan profound sword were to be targeted by others, he would be in deep trouble. As if sensing Yi Xian's worries, the otherworldly demon king said, young friend, there's no need to worry about anything else. My otherworldly demon race will be by your side the entire time. Of course, I hope that you can represent our otherworldly demon race to participate in the exhibition. Hearing those words, Yi Xian immediately understood. The other party's target was the cyan profound sword. The otherworldly demon king continued, there will be many powerful races appearing at the exhibition. Young friend, you can participate in it. Hearing those words, Yi Xian smiled, all right. The otherworldly demon king nodded. Young friend, if you have no other matters to attend to, you can follow me to the otherworldly demon race. Yi Xian said with a deep voice, I still have some matters that I need to attend to. This. The otherworldly demon king smiled, it's fine. As he spoke, he took out a token and passed it over to Yi Xian. This is the spatial teleportation token. Young friend, activate it, and you will be able to reach our otherworldly demon race within 2 hours. Yi Xian kept the spatial teleportation token and said with a smile, that's great. The otherworldly demon king nodded. I'll be waiting for you at the otherworldly demon race. As he spoke, he prepared to lead the otherworldly demons away. At this moment, Yi Xian hurriedly said, wait a moment, I have a presumptuous request. The otherworldly demon king smiled, speak. Yi Xian glanced at the desolate city lord and Emperor Jun in the distance. Senior, my 2 friends have already reached their limits. May I ask if Senior can guide them a little so that they can break through their limits? Hearing those words, the desolate city lord and Emperor Jun were moved. This young Master Yi hasn't forgotten about them. Their lives were truly worth it. The otherworldly demon king glanced at the desolate city lord and Emperor Jun before saying, this is a small matter. If the 2 of you are willing, you can follow me to the otherworldly demon race. The desolate city lord hurriedly said, yes. That's a level 4 starfield. Emperor Jun. If this chapter is not complete, please flip the page. The desolate city lord also hurriedly said, yes. I'm willing. The otherworldly demon king nodded, and then he waved his right hand lightly. 2 teleportation formations suddenly appeared beneath their feet. Meanwhile, he seemed to have thought of something and he gazed at Xiaoan. He thought for a moment, and then he flicked his finger, causing a ball of light to appear in front of Xiao, and Xiaoan glanced at the otherworldly demon king. What's this? The otherworldly demon king said, it's a legacy ball. This ball contains the complete legacy of a rank 10 expert. You can attain rank 10 once you absorb it. Rank 10. Xiaoan's expression changed when she heard this. However, she didn't take it, and she turned around to look at Yi Xian instead. Yi Xian smiled, Senior, it's a gesture of kindness. Please accept it. Xiaoan nodded and put the ball of light away. The otherworldly demon king gazed at Yi Xian, farewell. As he spoke, he and the otherworldly demons by his side started to fade. Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared here. It was none other than Jingji. Jingji gazed at Yi Xian with a pleading gaze. She knew that as long as Yi Xian spoke, her fate would change. Yi Xian looked at Jingji and said with a smile, Miss Jingji, what can I do for you? Jingji said in a deep voice, Young Master Yi, for the sake of our previous relationship, Yixian walked up to Jingji and smiled. "We're not familiar." After saying this, he turned around and left with Xiao, and Jingji's expression froze. In the distance, the otherworldly demon king glanced at Jingji before withdrawing his gaze. In the next moment, he and the otherworldly demons disappeared. Jingji was silent. She knew that she would never have the chance to reach rank 9 or above in this lifetime. Cultivate by herself? The divine race had a deep foundation, but how many rank 9 experts did they have? There were only a few. If Jingji didn't have anyone to help her, she wouldn't even be able to reach rank 6 or 7, let alone rank 9. However, Xiaoan had reached the heavens in a single step. She had truly reached the heavens in a single step. Thinking of this, Jingji slowly closed her eyes. At this moment, she recalled her father's words, "You're not as good as Xiaoan." She was not convinced, so she joined forces with outsiders to pull Xiaoan down. Now, it was proven that she was indeed not as good as Xiaoan. From now on, there would be a gap between her and Xiao, and that she would never be able to cross. In some unknown starry sky, the plain-dressed woman and the green-robed man slowly walked into the distance. Not far in front of the two of them, there was a city wall that spanned across the starry sky. Behind the city wall was a tall tower. The green-robed man glanced behind him and frowned. "What is Brother Xiao doing? Why isn't he here yet?" At this moment, the space in front of the two of them suddenly trembled. In the next moment, a shadow appeared in front of the two of them. The green-robed man smiled slightly. "I'm just passing by." The shadow glanced at the two of them and narrowed his eyes. "This road is blocked. Leave quickly, or you'll have to bear the consequences." The plain-dressed woman suddenly took out a portrait. "This is my brother." The green-robed man. The shadow glanced at the portrait in the plain-dressed woman's hand, and then he frowned slightly and was slightly displeased. "What's the relationship between your brother and me? You're ridiculous." The plain-dressed woman pointed with her fingers. The shadow's physical body collapsed, and only his soul was left. The shadow's eyes were wide open, and they were filled with terror. "Did I say something wrong?" P.S. I recommend a friend's book. Cultivation begins with kowtowing. Those who like Xianxia should read it. It's already 1,000,000 words and can be slaughtered. End of this chapter. Chapter 1873. The figure was completely dumbfounded. What did he say? His body was gone? The green-robed man glanced at the plain-dressed woman and was about to speak. Suddenly, an angry roar resounded from within the city wall. "How dare you!" As the voice fell, a terrifying pressure suddenly swept out from within the city wall. In an instant, the space around the plain-dressed woman became illusory. The woman in the plain dress stared at a spot not far away from her with an expressionless face. She didn't make a move and allowed that powerful force to slam into her body. In an instant, that powerful force disappeared without a trace. It was like a pebble falling into the sea, disappearing without a trace. This, following a shocked voice, an afterimage appeared in front of the plain-dressed woman and the green-robed man. The afterimage gradually solidified. Its appearance was not particularly different from that of a human, but its skin was dark purple, and so were its eyes. The green-robed man sized up the creature in front of him. "What race are you from?" The creature glanced at the green-robed man and said, "The illusion tribe." The green-robed man nodded slightly. The man from the illusion tribe cupped his fists. "You are?" The green-robed man smiled. "We are not interested in the illusion tribe." At this moment, the plain-dressed woman suddenly opened her palm. In the next moment, a sword flew out from her hand, and in an instant, the sword was pressed against the forehead of the man from the illusion tribe. The expression of the man from the illusion tribe froze. The plain-dressed woman took out a portrait of Yixian. "My brother, do you understand?" The green-robed man felt a headache coming on. The man from the illusion tribe hurriedly said, "Yes." He was not stupid. How could he not understand? The plain-dressed woman put away her sword and waved her sleeves. In an instant, the space around the man from the illusion tribe fluctuated like waves. The man from the illusion tribe's eyes were filled with shock. The plain-dressed woman suddenly walked to the right. The green-robed man looked at the plain-dressed woman. "Where are you going?" The plain-dressed woman did not answer and disappeared into the distance. At this moment, the man from the illusion tribe looked in the direction where the plain-dressed woman had left and said with a trembling voice, "Thank you for your guidance." The green-robed man was about to speak when he suddenly turned around. Not far away, a ray of sword light appeared. Then a swordsman walked over. Swordsman glanced at the green-robed man's side. "Where's Tianming?" The green-robed man shrugged. "Let's go." Swordsman frowned. "Gone?" The green-robed man nodded. "Forget about her. Let's go." With that, he rode his sword and disappeared into the distance. Swordsman pondered for a moment before disappearing into the distance as well. The man from the illusion race wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. What kind of creatures were these three? It was actually so terrifying. As if he'd thought of something, he opened up his palm, and the portrait left behind by the woman in a simple dress appeared before him. After looking at the portrait for a long time, he suddenly said, "Make 100,000 copies of this portrait. I want every single clansman to have a copy. If you encounter this person, notify me immediately." As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at the space in front of him, and his expression grew even more solemn. In that instant just now, the woman in a plain dress had directly sent him into the 7th layer of space. Although it was only for a moment, he had already experienced the mysteries of the 7th layer of space-time. To him, this was undoubtedly the opening of a new door. Azure Province, inside the palace. Yixian sat on the dragon throne with Tuoba Yen in his arms. Tuoba Yen nestled in Yixian's arms and asked softly, "Are you all right now?" Yixian nodded. "The crisis of humanity has been resolved. Now, I'm going to explore the outside world." Tuoba Yen looked up at Yixian. "The outside world?" Yixian smiled. "Yes. Do you want to see the outside world together?" Tuoba Yen shook his head. "The human world hasn't been sorted out yet. Why would I want to go outside?" Hearing this, Yixian fell silent. The current human race had already come into contact with the civilizations of the universe outside. However, the entire human race was really very weak in the vast universe. If an outside civilization invaded human civilization, with the current strength of humanity, they would not be able to resist at all. Thinking of this, Yixian said solemnly, "You reminded me." Tuoba Yen looked at Yixian. "You want to manage the entire human race?" Yixian looked at Tuoba Yen and said with a smile, "Tell me what you think." Tuoba Yen shook his head. "You won't be able to manage it. Although the human race has resolved the crisis this time, many people don't even know about it. If you forcefully manage it, it will only be a thankless effort." Yixian fell silent. Tuoba Yen said again, "Leading the entire human race forward is too tiring. I don't want you to be so tired." Yixian's right hand slipped restlessly into Tuoba Yen's clothes and said with a smile, "That's true." Tuoba Yen rolled his eyes at Yixian. "Haven't you asked for enough?" Yixian laughed. "Even 10 times a day isn't enough." Tuoba Yen, soon, some discordant voices came from the hall. On the 3rd day, Yixian left Qingqing. He did not head directly to the otherworldly demonic tribe but entered Xiaoda. Cultivate. He was going to consolidate his cultivation at rank 9. Other than that, he also obtained 3 white balls of light from the otherworldly demonic tribe. All 3 balls of light contained an inheritance. The otherworldly demonic tribe was very interesting. They could extract all the memories and life experiences of a dying otherworldly demon and store them in a ball of light for the next otherworldly demon to use. This was what they called an inheritance. This method could ensure that the otherworldly demonic tribe would remain strong forever. Of course, there were some drawbacks. The inheritor might be affected by those memories, and this depended on the grade of the ball of light. The higher the grade, the less the inheritor would be affected. The one Shaoan obtained was of the highest grade, and the influence was almost negligible. As for the ones Yixian obtained, although they were not of high grade, they could not affect him. After all, he was a swordsman. His will was not something ordinary people could compare to. The 3 balls of light were all rank 9 inheritances. This was enough for Yi Xian. He had no intention of rushing to rank 10 now. He kept 1 ball of light for himself and gave the other 2 to Lin Shan and Fan Duo. Naturally, he would not forget those who had helped him before. In Xiao Ta's body, after absorbing all the inheritances in the ball of light, Yi Xian sat cross-legged and began to digest the memories. It had to be said that the otherworldly demonic tribe was indeed much more advanced than the celestial tribe. In terms of space-time, the otherworldly demonic tribe's understanding was far superior to the celestial tribe's. Other than him, Little Soul was also making a breakthrough. He was looking forward to Little Soul's breakthrough. Cultivation knew no time. About a few years later, Yi Xian had completely grasped the 4th dimension. Not only that, after absorbing the otherworldly demonic tribe's inheritance ball, his knowledge also increased greatly. At the same time, he gained a deeper understanding of the otherworldly demonic tribe. The otherworldly demonic tribe used to be in this boundless universe. However, billions of years ago, the ancestor of the otherworldly demonic tribe stepped into the 5th dimension. Thus, he led the entire otherworldly demonic tribe to become a level 4 civilization and left this boundless universe for the higher-level Tianling cosmos. They were the only race in this boundless universe to reach level 4. And now, the otherworldly demonic tribe was trying to reach level 5. At this moment, the Cyan Profound Sword appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and looked at the Cyan Profound Sword in front of him. Now, the Cyan Profound Sword had made another breakthrough. Yi Xian grasped the Cyan Profound Sword and slowly closed his eyes. Power. He felt that the power contained in the Cyan Profound Sword was at least 10 times stronger than before. Yi Xian was a little dumbfounded. This increase was a little too exaggerated. At this moment, Little Soul suddenly said, "Young master, I'll take you to a place." After saying that, she directly disappeared on the spot with Yi Xian. When they reappeared, they were already in a space-time. Yi Xian was stunned. The space-time around him was stacked layer by layer like a tall building. Yi Xian said solemnly, "The 5th dimension?" Little Soul giggled, "Yes. Young master, as long as you take me, you can appear in the 5th dimension. Not only that, the space-time pressure here can't hurt you at all." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Why can't it hurt me?" Little Soul smiled. "I don't know. In any case, you're holding me now, so the space-time pressure can't pose any threat to you." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then took a few steps forward. He had just taken a few steps when he felt countless terrifying space-time pressures, but he seemed to be transparent, and the space-time pressure had no effect on him. What was going on? Yi Xian frowned. Could it be that the Cyan Profound Sword had unlocked a new function after its breakthrough? Immunity to space-time? At this thought, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Was he already immune to space-time? At this thought, Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Little Soul, can you feel the next dimension?" Little Soul said, "Yes." As she spoke, the space-time around Yi Xian suddenly changed. Soon, Yi Xian appeared in a space-time vortex. At first glance, it was an endless space-time vortex. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Was this the 6th dimension? Yi Xian gulped. He glanced around. The whole vortex exuded endless space-time pressure, and the strength of this space-time pressure was at least 100 times stronger than the 5th dimension. Intuition told him that a wisp of space-time pressure could easily obliterate him. Damn, this was too exciting. Yi Xian asked again, "Little Soul, can we go to the next dimension?" After a moment of silence, Little Soul said, "Yes." With that, the space around Yi Xian changed, and soon Yi Xian appeared in a pitch-black darkness. Yi Xian frowned. "This is," Little Soul said, "it seems to be the 7th dimension." Yi Xian glanced around, and all he could see was darkness. A space-time black hole. The 7th dimension was a space-time black hole? Yi Xian carefully sensed his surroundings. Gradually, his expression became extremely solemn. There was also space-time pressure in this endless space-time black hole, and it was at least 100 times stronger than the 6th layer spacetime pressure. This was too terrifying. Little Soul said again, "Young master, I have already felt the next dimension." Yi Xian was silent, and a great plan slowly formed in his mind. Chapter 1874. Under the guidance of Little Soul, Yi Xian came to the 8th layer of time and space. As soon as he arrived at the 8th layer of time and space, Yi Xian was stunned, because he found that in front of him, there was a person who looked exactly like him. What's going on? He frowned. At this time, the him in front of him also frowned. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly let Little Soul take him out of the 8th layer of time and space. After returning to reality, Yi Xian's expression was extremely solemn. At that moment, he suddenly felt a little flustered, or rather, afraid from the bottom of his heart. What kind of time and space was that? Why was there another him? Was that him real? There was no answer. Little Soul did not know either. After a moment, Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "It seems that I have to ask Qing, or when I see him in the future." He did not dare to continue to explore the 9th layer of time and space. He was afraid that he would play himself to death. Yi Xian put away the azure profound sword, then took out the teleportation token given to him by the spiritual king, and the next moment he disappeared. Heavenly Spirit Universe, Otherworldly Spirit World. When Yi Xian opened his eyes, he was already in the palace of the Otherworldly Spirit World. At this time, an old otherworldly spirit suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man bowed respectfully to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, the patriarch has been waiting for a long time." Yi Xian smiled slightly. "Please lead the way." The old spiritual king bowed slightly. "Follow me." After saying that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian followed the old spiritual king into a hall. In the hall, there was only the spiritual king. Seeing Yi Xian, the spiritual king got up, walked in front of Yi Xian, and smiled slightly. "Little friend Yi." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Senior, this exhibition you asked me to participate in, it shouldn't be that simple, right?" The spiritual king nodded. "To be honest, this time I invited you to participate in the divine item exhibition is to ask for your help." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What kind of favor?" The otherworldly demonic king replied. "There are 3 superpowers in the Tianling cosmos. Other than our otherworldly demonic tribe, there's also the Nether Spirit tribe and the Heaven's Sanctum. On the other hand, the otherworldly demonic tribe is the sworn enemy of the Heaven's Sanctum. Every single divine artifact exhibition, the 2 of us would compete with one another, and the loser would be humiliated." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior wants to use my sword?" The otherworldly spirit king chuckled. "That's right." Yi Xian was silent. He hadn't forgotten that the otherworldly demonic tribe had declared that they were mortal enemies. If he were to help the otherworldly demonic tribe, he would be making a powerful enemy out of nowhere. The otherworldly demonic king suddenly spoke up. "Young friend, your 2 friends have already reached 10 Dan. Not only so, with the help of our otherworldly demonic tribe, they should be able to reach 11 Dan very soon. Other than that, I have also sent my men to keep an eye on the humans. With our otherworldly demonic tribe around, no one will be able to harm the humans." With that said, he opened his palm, and a ball of light appeared in front of Yi Xian. This ball of light was nearly twice the size of the one he had given Shaoan. The otherworldly demonic king said, "Young friend, this ball contains the heritage of a former king of our otherworldly demonic tribe. If you absorb it, you will be able to reach at least 12 Dan. Not only so, you will be able to grasp many space-time arts. Of course, even if young friend is unwilling to help our otherworldly demonic tribe, we will still gift this to you. Of course, I have to remind you that helping our otherworldly demonic tribe will only result in offending the Heaven's Sanctum. However, rest assured, our otherworldly demonic tribe will deal with the Heaven's Sanctum. We won't allow them to harm you." As he spoke, he passed the ball of light over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. He was really a smart person. He hadn't done anything at all, but he had already received so many benefits from the other party. It was clear that the other party was making it hard for him to turn them down. Yi Xian fell silent. His guess was that the other party was trying to drag him down with them. To be more precise, the other party was trying to drag his big brother down with him. It wasn't that his thoughts were complicated, but that he had a clear mind. What right did the other party have to treat him, Yi Xian? Was it because he was handsome? Clearly not. As the king of such a fearsome race, everything he did was for the sake of his race. Such a person wouldn't mix personal emotions into his actions. As such, it was impossible for the other party to do so out of admiration for him, Yi Xian. There had to be a scheme behind it. And this scheme was definitely his big brother's doing. And he couldn't let his emotions get the better of him. Most of the time, there was no such thing as camaraderie between races. There was only mutual benefit. With such thoughts in mind, Yi Xian turned to the otherworldly demonic king and said with a smile, "Elder, take a look at my sword." As he spoke, he passed the green profound sword over to the otherworldly demonic king. The otherworldly demonic king glanced at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand, and in the next instant his face warped in shock. This sword has grown stronger? Yi Xian nodded. That's right. As he spoke, the green profound sword dived into the fifth layer of spacetime. Upon seeing this sight, the otherworldly demonic king narrowed his eyes. The fifth layer of spacetime. The sword had actually dived into the fifth layer of spacetime. Furthermore, it was able to withstand the spatial pressure of the fifth layer. How terrifying! Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and the green profound sword appeared in his hand. He looked at the otherworldly demonic king and said with a smile, "Elder, I Yi Xian am an honest man. I sincerely wish to befriend the otherworldly demonic race." The otherworldly demonic king glanced at Yi Xian, and a hint of solemnity flashed in the depths of his eyes. Our otherworldly demonic race also sincerely wishes to befriend this young friend and befriend the human race. How could he not understand the meaning behind Yi Xian's words? Yi Xian did not wish to be used. Taking out the sword earlier was not only a display of his strength, but also a warning. Yi Xian smiled. Tomorrow is the divine item exhibition, right? The otherworldly demonic king nodded. That's right. Yi Xian nodded. Elder, I will return to rest for a while. I will be punctual tomorrow. The otherworldly demonic king immediately said, Send young friend to the spirit god pavilion to rest. The old otherworldly demon who had led the way appeared before Yi Xian and bowed slightly. Young Master Yi, please follow me. Yi Xian clasped his fist. Elder, see you tomorrow. After which, he turned around and left. After Yi Xian left, an otherworldly demon female appeared in the hall. She glanced at the distant hall and said calmly, Father, is there a need to treat a human this way? The otherworldly demon king glanced at the female otherworldly demon and asked, Then what do you think? The female otherworldly demon replied calmly, This human is just a lowly being created by the celestial race. Putting them aside, even the celestial race is nothing more than an ant in the eyes of our otherworldly demonic race. Shut up! The otherworldly demon king suddenly bellowed. The female otherworldly demon's face darkened, and she hurriedly lowered her head. The otherworldly demon king turned to the female otherworldly demon king and said, Did you see the sword in his hand? The space-time mastery contained in that sword has already surpassed our otherworldly demonic race. Hearing this, the female otherworldly demon king's face was filled with shock. How is that possible? The otherworldly demon king said softly, Under normal circumstances, it is not very possible. But that is the truth. His big brother defeated me with a single sword. As he spoke, he slowly closed his eyes. The reason why I allowed him to come here and participate in the God Item exhibition was to rope him in and make Heaven's Sanctum target him. But who would have thought that this little fellow would see through my intentions? The female otherworldly demon king said solemnly, Then, Father, what should we do now? After a moment of silence, the otherworldly demon king said, Keep expressing goodwill. The female otherworldly demon king frowned. But if he only takes benefits without doing anything, The otherworldly demon king laughed and said, "I don't believe that his skin is that thick." Under the lead of the otherworldly demon king, Yi Xian arrived at the spirit god pavilion. As soon as he entered the spirit god pavilion, an extremely pure spiritual energy rushed toward him. The otherworldly demon king bowed slightly and said, "Young Master Yi, rest well." After saying those words, he left the room. Yi Xian entered Xiao Ta's body and took out the inheritance orb that the otherworldly demon king had given him. He infused his Xian Qi into it, and the orb disappeared into his glabella. In an instant, countless information surged into his mind. Rank 10 expert. In order to reach rank 10, one had to overlap the spacetime of the first layer to the fourth layer, forming a spacetime overlap. Just like Nama Wuxian. Naturally, it was not easy to achieve this. However, there was a method in the inheritance orb. Yi Xian realized that the inheritance orb was really like cheating. It was a complete duplication. Strength came too easily. It was because the otherworldly demonic tribe had such a method that they were able to maintain the number of experts in their tribe. When an expert fell, it wouldn't take long for the tribe to groom another expert. Under such circumstances, as long as the otherworldly demonic tribe did not provoke a civilization of a higher level, ordinary civilizations would not be able to stand against them. Of course, this kind of inheritance light ball also had a flaw, and that was that it was too easy to obtain strength. Moreover, it was all the path that the inheritor had taken. Under such circumstances, it was almost impossible for the inheritor to surpass the original owner. In the otherworldly demonic tribe, there was basically no one who could surpass the original owner. This was a huge flaw. Nevertheless, the inheritance orb was still something that countless otherworldly demonic tribe dreamed of. This was cheating. Normally, it would take at least 100,000 years to reach rank 10. However, with the inheritance orb, it would take less than 10,000 years. This shortened the time required by at least 10 times. At this moment, Yi Xian was hesitating. Should I use it or not? Without much hesitation, he decided to use it. Of course, he wouldn't copy the other party completely. He needed to learn from the other party's experience, especially the other party's manipulation of space-time. This was what he wanted to learn the most at the moment. Time passed quickly. The next day, the otherworldly demon elder arrived at the door of Yi Xian's room. He bowed slightly and said, "Young Master Yi, the God item exhibition is about to begin." A moment later, the door opened, and Yi Xian appeared in front of the otherworldly demon elder. The otherworldly demon elder bowed slightly again and said, "Young Master Yi, the chief is waiting outside." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Let's go." Yi Xian followed the otherworldly demon elder to the entrance of the palace. The otherworldly demon king was already waiting there. The otherworldly demon king smiled and said, "Little friend Yi, let's walk there. On the way, I will explain the Tianling universe to you." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I also want to know more about this universe." The otherworldly demon king nodded and led Yi Xian into the distance. On the way, the otherworldly demon king said, "Little friend Yi, may I ask which civilization the creator of this sword came from? Which civilization did Qing'er come from?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Probably from a civilization called Invincible, Otherworldly Demon King. P.S. The new year is coming and I'm going to be busy. I'm saving up my manuscripts so that I can play for a few days during the new year. I don't have enough updates, so I don't like it. Anyway, I will work hard to save more manuscripts and strive for more, and more. Also, does anyone want to walk on? If you do, you can leave your name in the book review section. I will choose a few more eye-catching cameos. If you have any suggestions, feel free to tell me. I will try my best to reply. As for the votes, don't vote. I haven't updated much, and sometimes I'm a little weak. Give me the votes, I'm a little ashamed. Chapter 1875. What civilization does the Qing'er belong to? Yi Xian really didn't know. In any case, as far as he was concerned, Qing'er was invincible. From the moment he met Qing'er, she had always been invincible. When he met the god race, he thought that the god race, who had created the human race, could break the myth of the Qing heir's invincibility. However, it turned out that the god race, who had created the human race, was like an ant in front of the Qing heir. Just how strong was she? He didn't know, but the moment he asked, it was invincible. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the otherworldly spirit king fell silent. Invincible. To him, saying that it was invincible was a little exaggerated. However, there was no need to doubt the strength of the person who had created the sword. The other party was at least an expert from a level 5 civilization. A level 5 civilization. With such a thought in mind, the otherworldly spirit king's expression became a little complicated. The otherworldly demonic tribe had been striving for innumerable years to reach the level of a tier 5 civilization, but even now, there was no hope at all. He had never thought that a human could reach a level 5 civilization. Even the god race, who had created the human race, was only a level 3 civilization. The human race was about to rise. The otherworldly spirit king sighed deeply. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Senior, is there a level 5 civilization in the heavenly spirit universe?" The otherworldly spirit king shook his head. "No." Yi Xian frowned. "Not before." The otherworldly spirit king hesitated for a moment before he said, "A very long time ago, there was an extremely powerful race in this universe called the spirit beast race. They were originally demon beasts, and their strength was mediocre. However, an extraordinary genius appeared in their race, Yao. This beast reached the legendary 14th stage and stepped into the 6th layer of spacetime. Because of his breakthrough, the entire beast race's bloodline broke through its shackles and evolved into a spirit. Under Yao's lead, the spirit beast race entered a level 5 civilization. However, for some unknown reason, they completely disappeared. According to our speculations, they either encountered an invincible civilization, or they left the heavenly spirit universe." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Once your bloodline reaches a certain level, you can also enter a higher civilization?" The otherworldly spirit king chuckled. "Of course." Yi Xian furrowed his brows and was a little puzzled. His bloodline wasn't bad. Why was he still so weak? Could father have done something to it? The otherworldly spirit king continued, "The heavenly spirit cosmos is also facing a huge problem. Once this problem erupts, the entire heavenly spirit cosmos will be in chaos." Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and turned to the otherworldly spirit king. "A huge problem?" The spirit king nodded. "There is a problem with the spiritual energy." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Is the spiritual energy in this universe not enough?" The otherworldly spirit king said, "Of course it's not enough. You should know that any expert who has reached a certain level can easily live for hundreds of thousands of years. The longer a person lives, the greater their need for the spiritual qi of this world. The heavenly spirit universe has a history of at least 1 trillion years since its birth, and over these years, the living beings of this universe have been absorbing the spiritual qi of this universe without any restraint. Now, it can be said that it has reached the end of the line. If we can't break through to a level 5 civilization and leave this universe will start killing each other." Yi Xian asked, "Elder, you mentioned that there are 3 superpowers in this universe. Other than the otherworldly demonic tribe, there's also the netherworld tribe and the heaven's sanctum, right?" The otherworldly spirit king nodded. Yi Xian said, "Elder, can you tell me more about those 2 superpowers?" The otherworldly spirit king smiled. "Of course. The netherworld tribe is a special race. They live in the land of Yin. They love the aura of death, and they are good at seducing souls. They are a very strange race. Even the otherworldly demonic tribe doesn't want to provoke them. Of course, we aren't afraid of them either. They don't come out much either, and they usually stay in the realm of Yin." At this point, he looked at Yi Xian and said seriously, "Little friend, remember, don't step into the realm of Yin if you don't have anything to do. It's not a place that ordinary living beings can stay in." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Elder, now that you mention it, I have a feeling that I might appear in that place in the future." The otherworldly spirit king frowned. Yi Xian shook his head. Intuition. The otherworldly spirit king. Yi Xian said again, Elder, tell me more about the heaven's sanctum. The otherworldly spirit king's face gradually turned cold. The heaven's sanctum was originally an organization of unaffiliated cultivators. However, as it grew larger and larger, there are all kinds of living beings in it. There seems to be a human among them. Yi Xian frowned. A human? The otherworldly spirit king nodded. There seems to be a human among them. Yi Xian's curiosity was piqued. At this moment, the otherworldly spirit king suddenly said, Little friend, we have arrived. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and raised his head. There was a huge palace in the air not too far away. The palace seemed to be made out of crystal, and the outer walls were smooth like mirrors. Furthermore, it was rotating slowly, looking extremely luxurious. The otherworldly spirit king said, This is the odd crystal palace. Usually, if our otherworldly demonic tribe has any auctions, we will hold it here. After the exhibition of the god item, there will be a batch of god items being auctioned here. If little friend is interested, you can buy them. Yi Xian blinked his eyes. What do you want to buy them with? The otherworldly spirit king opened his palm, and a dark purple crystal appeared in his hand. This is a heavenly crystal, the currency of our celestial spirit cosmos. Heavenly crystals are divided into low grade, high grade, and supreme grade. A supreme grade heavenly crystal is sufficient for a stage 10 expert to cultivate for a year. As he spoke, he smiled. Cultivation is actually very expensive. Little friend should have experienced it, right? Yi Xian shook his head. I have never been short of money. The otherworldly spirit king's expression froze. Just as Yi Xian said, he had never been short of money. Cultivation resources? He really had never been short of money. At this moment, a female otherworldly spirit walked in front of them. The female otherworldly spirit said, Royal Father. As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, nice to meet you. The otherworldly spirit king smiled. Little friend, she is my daughter, the... Yi Xian smiled. Nice to meet you, Miss Yichin. Yichin smiled. Royal Father, young Master Yi, the exhibition is about to begin. Let's take a seat. The otherworldly spirit king nodded. Little friend Yi, please. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, please. The otherworldly spirit king smiled. Let's go together. In front of Yi Xian, he really did not dare to be careless. After the three of them entered Heavenly Crystal Hall, Yi Xian discovered that the interior of Heavenly Crystal Hall was extremely large. There was no obstruction at the top, and one could see the blue sky and white clouds with a single glance. At the center of Heavenly Crystal Hall, there was a huge circular platform. The circular platform was over a dozen zhang tall. On the circular platform stood an otherworldly spirit female, and around the circular platform were huge floating chairs. At this moment, there were already people sitting on the floating chairs. Clearly, they were here to participate in the divine object exhibition. The otherworldly spirit king brought Yi Xian to the seat at the very front and sat down. He turned his head to the right. Not far away, there was a middle-aged man sitting there. The middle-aged man had two horns on his head, and there was a faint smile on his face. When Yi Xian sat down, he glanced at Yi Xian. Beside Yi Xian, the otherworldly spirit king said, This person is the current Heaven's Sanctum Master, Mu Tian, from the Rhino Spirit Clan. Yi Xian glanced at Mu Tian. Unfathomable. Mu Tian suddenly looked at Yi Xian and smiled. This little brother is? Yi Xian smiled. Human race, Yi Xian. Human race? Mu Tian smiled. So it's young Master Yi of the human race. It's an honor to meet you. Yi Xian was speechless. Honor my A**. Do you know me? The otherworldly spirit king smiled. Manor Master Mu, I wonder what divine object your heaven's sanctum has brought this time? I'm looking forward to it. Mu Tian laughed. He didn't answer the otherworldly spirit king. Instead, he looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Young Master Yi should be new to the heavenly spirit cosmos. I have something to give to young Master Yi, As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a divine object appeared in his hand. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. There's no need for that. Hearing this, Mu Tian was stunned. The otherworldly spirit king beside Yi Xian looked at Yi Xian with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Yi Xian smiled. Manner Master Mu, thank you for your kindness. If I need anything, I will look for the otherworldly demonic tribe. Mu Tian's smile gradually disappeared. The otherworldly spirit king laughed. Young friend Yi, if you need anything, feel free to tell us. As long as the otherworldly demonic tribe has it, we will not be stingy. Yi Xian smiled. Thank you. Is Mu Tian expressing goodwill? Yi Xian knew that the other party was trying to drive a wedge between him and the otherworldly demonic tribe. If he were to accept Mu Tian's gift, the otherworldly demonic tribe would surely feel displeased. Would he be able to form a good relationship with the Heaven's Sanctum? The Heaven's Sanctum had never seen his big brother's strength before, so it was impossible for the other party to respect him as much as the otherworldly demonic tribe did. There was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. One had to be more vigilant in order to survive in the outside world. One mustn't be blinded by the benefits before them. Mu Tian glanced at Yi Xian and chuckled. After which, he retracted his gaze, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Beside Yi Xian, the otherworldly spirit king revealed a smile. A human? At this moment, a light chuckle sounded not too far away from him. Yi Xian turned around and saw a man standing not too far away. A human. Yi Xian was taken aback. Was that the human expert who had walked out from the human cosmos? Beside Yi Xian, the otherworldly spirit king said, his name is Ling Tian, and he's a human expert. He's currently an elder of the Heaven's Sanctum, a rank 12 pinnacle expert. Ling Tian walked over to Mu Tian's side, and he turned to Yi Xian with a smile. To think that after so many years, a human expert would finally emerge from the human race. Yi Xian chuckled. Indeed, it isn't easy for the human race. At this moment, Mu Tian suddenly burst into laughter. Elder Ling Tian, as the #1 expert of the human race, why don't you tell us about the human race so that we can understand it better? Yi Xian frowned. #1 expert of the human race? Mu Tian turned to Yi Xian and chuckled. Elder Ling Tian is the #1 expert of the human race. Do you have a problem with that? Yi Xian glanced at Ling Tian. Was the #1 expert of the human race self-proclaimed? The otherworldly spirit king burst into laughter. It must be. Mu Tian chuckled. It seems like young Master Yi isn't convinced. Since you're not convinced, why don't you challenge me to a duel? Ling Tian chuckled. I can do it any time. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian. What about you? Yi Xian took out the profound azure sword. With a thought, the profound azure sword entered the 6th spacetime. Seeing this, the expressions of Ling Tian and the others froze. Yi Xian chuckled. A duel? A mere rank 12 is boring. Come, Mu Tian abode master, summon your ancestor. Everyone was speechless. Chapter 1876. Ancestor Summoning. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. How arrogant! He actually dared to make the Heaven's Sanctum summoning ancestor summoning. However, all the experts in the surroundings fell silent when they saw Yi Xian's azure sword, and their expressions gradually became solemn. The 6th layer of spacetime. The sword actually entered the 6th layer of spacetime. The 6th layer of spacetime. After all, even Mu Tian and the otherworldly demonic king were only at the 13th stage, and they could only enter the 5th layer of spacetime. However, this human could actually enter the 6th layer of spacetime? Mu Tian stared at Yi Xian with an extremely solemn expression. The sword before him had really surpassed the 5th layer of spacetime. Who exactly is this human? Mu Tian wasn't the only one, even the otherworldly demonic king was stunned. He didn't expect Yi Xian to be able to enter the 6th layer of spacetime. After all, Yi Xian was only at the 9th stage of spacetime. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Master Mu Tian, I'm still waiting for you to summon your ancestor. Mu Tian hesitated for a moment before he cupped his fists. Sir, I was rude just now. Please don't take it to heart. Yi Xian looked at Mu Tian, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Do you really believe that I won't take it to heart just because you said so? Mu Tian's expression became slightly unsightly. Yi Xian suddenly grinned and opened his palm, and the azure sword flew into his hand. Since Master Mu Tian doesn't want to summon your ancestor, then let's have a spar. I'll be responsible for my own life and death. He'll be responsible for his own life and death. All the experts looked at Mu Tian. Would Mu Tian dare to accept the challenge? Mu Tian's expression was extremely unsightly. If he refused, how could he continue living in this world? However, if he accepted the challenge, then it would be a life and death battle. This human before him was so mysterious, and he had no confidence at all. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, You're not going to accept the challenge, and you're not giving me any benefits. Master Mu Tian, what's the meaning of this? Give me benefits? Mu Tian was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, Please forgive me for my rudeness just now. With that said, a storage ring silently appeared in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn, this person has some skills. He didn't even sense any spatial fluctuations before the storage ring appeared in his hand. He might not be able to beat them. Yi Xian naturally had to stop while he was ahead. Otherwise, wouldn't he be embarrassed if the other party really summoned his ancestor? Although he could enter the 8th space-time continuum, or even the 9th space-time continuum, he could only go in and do nothing else. This move could only be used to scare people. Yi Xian glanced at the storage ring on his hand. There were a total of 100,000 supreme-grade heaven crystals in it. It was enough for a long time. Yi Xian sheathed the azure profound sword. Forget it. Hearing this, Mu Tian relaxed. He was truly a little afraid of Yi Xian. Furthermore, there was no need for the Heaven's Sanctum to provoke an expert like Yi Xian. Spending some money to resolve this matter naturally couldn't be any better. However, he was still slightly worried because Yi Xian was very close to the otherworldly demonic race. At this moment, a slightly hoarse voice suddenly resounded from the side. Young Master Yi. Yi Xian turned around and saw a black-clothed expert floating not too far away. This black-clothed expert's entire body was covered in black clothes, and his true appearance couldn't be seen. Moreover, there was an extremely dense spirit death energy around him. The otherworldly spirit king by Yi Xian's side said in a low voice, This is the patriarch of the nether spirit race, Ming Dao. Yi Xian nodded slightly and looked at Ming Dao. Do you need something? Ming Dao looked at Yi Xian. After this exhibition ends, I wonder if young Master Yi would do me the honor of visiting my spirit dimension. Yi Xian smiled. Qing Qing, Yi family, ancestral hall, ancestors above. Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be removed, and Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man wearing a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders. But at this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly resounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old, and her two small hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's blood sister. This time, when she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you remove his title for no reason? The great elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a family matter, what are you interrupting? Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, My brother is fighting with the Li family over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the family, and his life is uncertain. But the family is using a groundless excuse to remove his crown prince position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he is removed or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away from me. At this moment, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder said coldly, then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi mansion rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years, and even now he is fighting for the family, but the family is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang, and he knew that his chance to show off had come. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position, and it is everyone's wish. What are you shouting for? As he said this, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. The crisp sound of the slap was heard, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen, but she did not cry. She just covered her cheek with her hand. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. I'm Zhang Mu, greeting the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. I will go through fire and water for the crown prince, and I will risk my life for you. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall, so don't show any mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly saw something and he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu once more. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." "Impudent!" The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Discard him or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is risking his life for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to see something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Peng! You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.